Hello friends, this is Grease speaking. Well, you guys kept on asking for it, so here it is. Everything is Fine, Season 4 Explained. Part 1. One of the most common comments I get is, when are you gonna do more Everything is Fine? Well, here's the deal. Season 4 isn't even finished yet. So at your suggestion, I decided to cover it in parts. Today I'll be covering the first 15 episodes, and when the next 15 are available and free, I'll make another video. I have to say, this season is absolutely bonkers in that perfect Everything is Fine kind of way. I could have never predicted the direction it would go, and that's not a complaint. I'm constantly surprised at how this series manages to keep things mysterious while still introducing new information. Don't worry, there are some big reveals here. There's also more questions, but we'll take what we can get. If you're a fan of Everything is Fine, then you can support the creator, Mike Burchell, by joining his Patreon. He's actually been doing a director's commentary on every episode so far, so if you want some behind the scenes on the series, go check that out. If for some reason you missed my other Everything is Fine videos, I'll link a playlist below so you can catch up. But otherwise, let's get into it. This is Season 4 of Everything is Fine Explained, Part 1. Episode 91, Fermi's Pet Project. Season 4 opens with some mysterious and bizarre images as well as a cryptic story. We see a field of flowers that kind of look like sunflowers but somewhat shaped like cat heads. A hand reaches out and scrapes some red jelly off of the top of one of the flowers. At the same time, a story is being told of a very old man and a very old woman who lived in a house surrounded by flowers. The very old woman asked her husband for a cat. Next, we see a frog that's face is very cat-like. It's captured and squeezed until it pukes up its green guts onto a large leaf, which is already coated in the red flower jelly. The mysterious person then rolls a sharp stick up in the leaf, seemingly making a poison dart. It's also worth noting that the hand we've seen almost looks furry, which is kinda odd. In the story, the old man went out to find a cat for the old woman and eventually came upon a hill that was covered in cats. While the story being told doesn't seem to match what we're seeing, it does somewhat reflect it to a degree, because next we see a lion and her cubs snuggled up in a cave on the side of a hill. The lion cub opens its eyes in fright, followed by its mother, who lets out a scary roar, but she's immediately hit with the poison dart and is knocked out. In the story, the old man finds billions and trillions of cats on the hill, and given that there's so many, they have a hard time deciding which one to keep. They ask the cats which one of them is the prettiest, and all of the cats speak up, claiming that they are. Then we see the lion's eye wide open with flames reflected in it, and it zooms out to show the animal's head cut off and being drained of blood into a basin. Next is a pretty eerie image of a figure in some kind of tribal outfit that has cat ears. They're standing on a plateau with the blood while a bonfire rages below and a massive crowd of people surround it. On a closer look, these tribe members are all wearing flat cat masks with various red markings on them. Even weirder, looking at the back of one of their heads, we can see that these beings seem to have actual cat ears and fur. The story continues being told with the trillions of cats arguing with each other over who the prettiest one is until they've all eaten each other up. In the end, only one cat remained. The old man asked the kitten how they were not eaten, and the kitten replied that they think of themselves as an ugly cat, so they didn't speak up. The old man brought the kitten home to the old woman, and they cleaned the kitten to find that it was a pretty cat indeed. In fact, the old man had seen trillions of cats, and this was by far the prettiest. We then see the tribe leader, or whoever this is, soak his hand in the lion's blood while speaking in some unidentifiable language. He then puts a bloody paw print on the mountain behind him and circles it with a black substance until it resembles the red pupil of an eye. The tribe leader raises his hands, and in the flames below, we see the words, "Everything is Fine, Part 4. How to Eat a Sun." If you think this was cryptic and confusing, let it be an indicator for the rest of the season, because despite all the things we've learned so far in this comic, it drops us right back into a sea of surprises and more questions. Also, it's worth noting that the story being told is actually excerpts from a 1928 children's book called Millions of Cats by Wanda Gog. I also want to point out that if you look at the necklaces the tribesmen are wearing, they are made up of modern objects like a binky, a set of keys, and a wallet. So this seems to be taking place in somewhat modern times. How it relates to the rest of this comic, I have no idea. Anyway, it then cuts back to Maggie in the future apologizing to Sam and wishing she had never left him, adding that things are so much worse out there than they imagined. She doesn't even know where to begin. She says that they thought they found the enemy base, but they were actually being watched the whole time. Before she says any more, Sarah gives her a big hug, and Maggie breaks down in tears, finally seeing her daughter after all this time. They say they love each other and that they'll never leave each other again. Sam's not as enthusiastic at Maggie's return and just tells Sarah that he's taking her baby, Margaret, back home. Maggie questions the name and Sam says that she's named after her dead grandma, who should have stayed that way. Damn, that's harsh. Sarah insists that Maggie come to her house and meet the baby as well as someone else, and the episode ends with a look at a new character with a purple cat head. Episode 92, Pinpoint the Second. In Sarah's house, Maggie finds a picture of Sarah's wedding day. In the photo, standing by Maggie is the purple-headed cat, presumably her husband, and some kid. On her other side is Sam, who's holding hands with a gentleman. We actually have seen him once before in the last season and learned that this was Sam's new boyfriend, Oliver. Sarah pulls Maggie into the other room to meet her husband Daniel, and he's overjoyed to meet her. He says that he would do anything to protect Sarah, die for her, or even kill for her, and extends that protection to Maggie since they're family now. He then calls her a celebrity and asks if she really was the youngest chef to win the prestigious Jacques Moustache Award. Remember, Maggie was a world-class chef before everything went to hell. She's a little standoffish towards Daniel and says, "So you're the guy who got my daughter pregnant?" Daniel awkwardly replies yes, and Sarah yells at her, so she tries to play nice. We learn that Daniel is actually the town's sheriff and says that they don't have a mayor, so most civil matters fall to him and his deputies. He says that if Maggie ever has a problem with anyone around here, just let him know and he'll take care of it. I don't know, guys. I'm already a little suspicious of Daniel, and let's be real, cops do not have a good standing in this comic so far. Anyway, he leaves to grab some food, and Maggie asks Sarah how they met. She says it was actually in the rooftop camps. Maggie then asks her something more serious. Was it really her choice? Did Daniel force her to get married? Sarah seems a little offended by the question and says of course not. She really loves him, and after they met, all she wanted to do was marry him. So they did as soon as she turned 18. Maggie then asks about her granddaughter, Margaret. Did Sarah choose to have her as well? There's a long pause and Sarah just asks her mom, "Why do you think we're alive?" Okay, that's a weird question. Before the conversation goes further, Daniel shows back up with some muffins. Just then, Sam walks out from Margaret's room after putting her to sleep and says he's waiting until Maggie leaves. Sarah understands that her parents have some stuff to work out, but Margaret's her daughter and she wants her to meet her grandma. Surprisingly, Maggie chimes in saying maybe she shouldn't. It's not okay for her to just come back and expect everything to be okay. So she says that she's gonna go, but first she needs to tell them something, including Sam. He mentions a message that they all heard and wonders if it was really Maggie. She says she'll get to that, but first she needs to tell them what she found. The answers to everything. What really happened to the world. So it looks like we don't have to worry. It's not just going to skip over the past from here. We're going to go back and find out what happened to Maggie and the rest of the crew after Charlie's death. I am curious what Sam was referencing though. What message did they all hear and why did it sound like Maggie? Episode 93. Burned. Maggie runs through Catford, stopping for a moment to cry before contacting Horace and the others on the radio to inform them that Charlie is dead. She says that they also know about the train, so if anyone's hearing her, run. It then says day 2, I guess meaning the second day in Catford. Tim and Nicole are bored on the train and try to entertain themselves. At the same time, Horace waits anxiously by the radio, having heard nothing from the others, when finally the radio buzzes and Ormel checks in with them. He says that him and Pleasehold are fine and that they recently checked in with Maggie and Charlie and that they're fine as well. Suddenly we can hear Pleasehold yell, saying please hold as usual. Ormel translates that the kid said it's hot, but Horace seems suspicious. Suddenly Judy comes in on the radio and says that Horace is breaking up, insisting that he go outside the train. However, he walks over to his bag and pulls out a pistol instead. Judy continues asking him to go outside and Horace calls Tim and Nicole in, giving them a hand signal. He then speaks to the radio saying, sorry, but you'll need to try harder to pull one over on this old dog. He doesn't know how the person on the radio is using their voices, but there's no way it's Judy or Ormel on the other side. Finally, the voice asks what gave it away, and Horace says it was the kid. Pleasehold didn't say it was hot. He said that they're burned. Suddenly, a dozen laser dots start appearing all over Horace and the train. Episode 94, Thud. Bullets rain into the train cabin and Nicole takes one to the arm. We then get a look at the culprits. Several drones are hovering outside of the train with attached guns. Horace hands Tim a pistol and Tim says that he doesn't think he can hit the drones from here. But Horace tells him it's not for the drones. He plans on trying to shoot down as many as he can, but if he dies, he tells Tim not to get captured. Instead, they should use the gun on themselves. Nicole Nicole grabs the gun and says screw that, she's gonna go out fighting. As they discuss it, they suddenly hear a series of loud thuds making their way through the train. They make a new plan. Nicole can keep an eye inside the train and shoot whoever or whatever is coming toward them. Meanwhile, Horace stands up and takes some shots at the drones outside. Tim is clearly in a panic, but Nicole tries to tell it to him straight. Horace is the most valuable part of their team. He's the only one who can save the world. Tim realizes she's right, and the two know what they have to do. He says it sounds stupid, but he really wanted to find out what was going on. It feels like they were so close to answers. At the same time, Horace is firing like a maniac, yelling that this isn't the first time he's shot down government drones. He turns over and finds that Tim and Nicole have exited to the next cab to face whatever's coming through the train. They tell him good luck and walk away. Ahead, they hear a massive guttural yell like from a beast. Tim wonders what the hell it was, and Nicole just sighs and says, probably something weird and up. Well, that's a pretty good guess. They say they love each other, and finally the door opens at the other end of the cab. In the dark, we can only see large red eyes peering in and hear strange growling noises. Suddenly, several more red eyes appear. We don't get to see exactly what it is, but Tim and Nicole are shocked, trying to make sense of it. Then, in a badass last stand, they get ready to fight in vain as the episode ends. Episode 95, Hang in There. In her chef garb, Maggie places the final touches on a fancy-looking scallop dish. Judy then says that she has a call from Sarah, and when she looks down, the dish has transformed into some strange lava ball. Okay, it's clear now that this is a dream or something. She looks at several other dishes that are all just as weird, like a plate with blood splats on it, or one that's got octopus tentacles in the shape of a heart. Finally, the waiter shows up and apologizes for letting her down. We can't see his face, but it seems to be Charlie. Judy chimes in again, saying that now Sam is on the phone. He says she's a bad mom and a coward, and wishes he never met her. He says all her new friends are gonna die in pain screaming, and it's all her fault. Maggie looks down again, and now the plate has a dish that you can interpret how you like, but it reminds me of Charlie's head sliced in half. In reality, Maggie wakes up from the awful nightmare hiding inside a hat store. It's now day 3 in Catford. She cocks her pistol and starts to head out, but before leaving she leaves a note in case the others find it. In the note, she apologizes that she wasn't stronger and that she let everyone down. She says that she searched all day and couldn't find anyone else. Since the town doesn't have running water, she plans on searching for some at the supply store and then head back to the train after that. In case it ever makes it back to him, she also tells Sam that she's sorry and that she loves him, and to tell Sarah she loves her too. She enters the supply store and searches for food and water when outside we can see someone watching the store with jagged cat ears on their mask. Episode 96, Super Void. Maggie makes her way through the store gathering supplies when suddenly a figure appears behind her. She turns to see a pretty horrifying character, a woman with a messed up cat mask that looks like a scarecrow or something, and she's wielding 2 bloody machetes. It's straight out of a slasher film. They stare at each other for a moment, and Maggie finally says that she's not afraid of the woman. The woman just cocks her head, and strangely, Charlie's voice comes out and starts to ask the famous question of, do you like trains? Then suddenly he just says, you sickos, and warns Maggie that if she hears this to run. There's some gory sounding noises and he screams in pain. I guess this is a recording or something? Well, Maggie doesn't wait around to ask questions and just says fuck you, firing a shot at the woman. Then in a sequence fit for the Matrix, the woman dodges the gunshots while running at Maggie. It seems she's got nearly superhuman agility. She takes a swing at Maggie with her machete and slices off her fingers. Oh my god, this season is off to a crazy start. Maggie sits on the floor cursing while her hand bleeds profusely and her attacker is looking down at her. She simply asks the woman why she's doing this and who she is. Instead of using her own voice, the woman answers in Maggie's, stating that her name is Maggie of neighborhood 147D. She's thankful for her husband, her loved ones, and the government that protects and feeds us. She's the happiest she's ever been. If you remember correctly, this is the weird prayer / declaration thing that Maggie said way back in season 1. Man, season 1 feels like it might as well be 100 years ago. Speaking of which, there is an insane callback here. When the lady is dodging the gunshots, she says, whoops, and someone made the connection that this is actually from way back when Maggie threw the mug on the ground in season 1. Also, there's a little message at the end of this episode by Mike Burchell that reads, did I color code thousands of speech bubbles to individual characters just for this relatively small payoff? Only a psycho would do that. Now, I know he said before that he does have the general plot all mapped out for the rest of this series, so I'm thinking he did do this and is in fact a psychopath. Episode 97, Toxoplasmosis. Maggie reaches for her dropped gun and the scary masked lady swipes at her with the machete. As the menacing woman stares at her, Maggie has a flashback to when she left Sam that day, presumably regretting it now. She then kicks the lady in her ankle, knocking her on her back, and takes the opportunity to run like hell. She starts running to the front of the store when she sees a creepy figure standing outside the front doors. It's only a silhouette, but whoever it is doesn't seem to be wearing a cat mask. Instead, they have a weird gourd-shaped head and a red glowing eye. Maggie literally nopes out and turns around, running out of the back exit. She falls to the ground and looks up to see two more figures standing in front of her, but this time it's Judy and Ormel. After finding a place to hide, Ormel wraps up Maggie's hand and we learn that Pleasehold went missing the first night in Catford. Maggie explains what happened to Charlie and then what happened between her and the woman, as well as the strange man she saw outside. She mentions the red eye, similar to when the government warns people, but believes it to be something else. We then get a close-up of the man's actual human eye and the red dot coming from within. She goes on to explain the woman's weird ability to copy voices, guessing it to be some kind of voice synthesizer. They make a plan to get back to the train and see what happened to the others before searching for Pleasehold. When they arrive, they find bullet holes and blood all about the place, but no sign of anyone here. On top of that, whoever did this smashed up the controls on the train so they can't leave. Judy then enters the next train cabin and comes back pretty upset. She tells them that Tim and Nicole are dead. Ormel can barely believe it and wants to see for himself, but Judy tells him that they wouldn't want him to see them like this, implying that something pretty horrific happened to them. Maggie asks if there was any kind of message, like the one on Charlie's body. Judy says that there was a message. It was just 2 words. But before she can say them, someone speaks through Horace's radio. It's Pleasehold, and the words Judy probably saw were please hold. Episode 99. 99 million. As soon as the crew hears the kid's voice, a device strapped to the underside of the table sprays a green gas and the train doors lock. They try to hold their breath, but it's no use. The gas gets into their lungs and they all pass out. Maggie wakes up in a daze and looks over to see Horace. That crazy son of a bitch is still alive. However, it zooms out to show that the two are restrained and hanging upside down. In a further zoom out, we also see Ormel and Judy, who are still unconscious. They seem to be inside of a large building. Maggie freaks out, asking where the hell they are, and Horace tells her to stay calm. Since they're hanging upside down, they have a higher chance of heart attack. They catch each other up on what happened, and Horace feels like everything is his fault. He says that there are only 3 of them here. He figured they'd be facing an army or something, but instead it's these freaks. He calls himself a moron, and Judy wakes up just in time to tell him to quit having a pity party. Yeah, they've suffered some casualties, but they all knew the risks when they came in, and besides, it was Judy's call, not Horace. Plus, she feels that they are finally close to getting some answers. This snaps Horace out of his funk, and he starts trying to think of a way out of this. At the same time, Ormel wakes up and freaks out for a minute before they all pause at the sound of footsteps heading their direction. The episode ends with a strange set of images, a cat head entering what looks like the center of a sun and ends up looking like an eye. It goes dark and we hear a new voice speak up saying, "You're all awake, now we can begin." Episode 100, Cats. This episode starts at day 100 million. Yeah. We see a giant red cat head that seems connected to a massive sun. In a zoom in, we find the head to be a sort of spaceship. Inside, 2 people stand on a platform. They're wearing cat masks, but they don't cover their full heads, and we can see their hair poking out. They address each other as husband and wife and have a cryptic conversation. The man asks his wife, "How is she?" We don't know who this she is, but it seems like they're sick or something. Maybe it's their daughter? The husband seems pretty upset and asks why it has forsaken them. And his wife tells him that its plans are known, every step is scribed. It does not act on feeling, but simply follows the words. But before she can speak the words, her husband tells her not to say them. We only get the first few syllables, which seem to be the first part of optimistic, but who knows. The husband says that they have the power to save her, mentioning some miracles they've seen. Yet every request they've sent is met with silence. He then says he believes it hates them. He goes on a rant about what they've done, the endless fighting with the other houses, killing trillions of innocents just to prove who's the most loyal. He just doesn't care anymore. He says soon another house will take the station, and then another in an endless circle. The chosen and the fallen infinitely swapping places. This sequence ends here, and all I can say is, what the fuck? This season has entered into a cosmic level I never would have imagined, and I can only speculate on what the hell they're talking about here. Who's they and what's it? But the system they talk about of the chosen and fallen and a fight to show who's the most loyal doesn't sound all that far from the systems we've seen in place in the present time. Anyway, let's get back to Maggie and the others. The voice we heard was that of the odd-shaped head from earlier, only this time we can actually see him in the light. His red mask, besides its weird shape, is also torn up in a similar fashion to the woman from earlier, except his ears are torn off and one of the human eyes is visible with that red dot in the center. He's also wearing a dress shirt, tie, and holding a briefcase. He approaches the hanging group and takes a big breath of air, saying, "They smell different than he thought." Okay, well, that's creepy. Judy just immediately says "F you" to the guy and that she's gonna cut out his tongue. The guy seems unfazed by her harsh words and even gets excited, saying he could use that. Horace yells at him asking why he brought them here and what's the point, but the man just laughs and mocks him for not knowing. He then informs them that he didn't bring them here. In fact, they came for the same reason, to find answers. And they actually did. He says they know everything now, and it's so much worse than they could imagine. With a creepy smile, he says he'll tell them the answers, but first, they're gonna answer some questions for him. His first victim is Maggie, and he asks her if she's ready to play the game. He then holds up a hammer covered in blood and green stuff. You might recognize this as the very same hammer that Maggie used to kill the cop in season 1. Episode 101, In the Bag. This episode kicks off with the man talking directly to the camera and saying, "Please do not be disturbed. We're making use of the emergency broadcast system for a special presentation. In fact, we have something you loyal, deserving citizens have been missing. A game show." He then presents his victims hanging from the ceiling, except Maggie, who's missing. The man says you can call him Father, and his lovely wife is behind the camera, who you can call Mother. He says the name of the game show is Obedience, and the camera pans over to Maggie, who's sitting with her fingerless hand on a table. A nail is partially stabbed into her hand, and in her other, she's wielding the hammer. She says, "My name is Maggie of neighborhood 147D. I feel spontaneously compelled to confess the following crimes." We can see that she's actually reading these words from cards that Please Hold is forced to hold up. And behind him is Mother, holding one of her machetes to the kid's throat. Maggie continues reading the cards, confessing to killing a police officer with this hammer and framing others for the murder. She also admits she left her husband and daughter and joined a group of rebels. She used this hand to disobey, and so she will show it obedience. She then raises the hammer and nails her own hand to the table. It's absolutely brutal. Father yells cut and asks Mother if it was too hammy, but she says it was great and to trust in his vision. It's really off-putting how casual this conversation is considering the circumstances. They start rolling again, and it's worth noting that Mother isn't actually holding a camera, implying that if this is recorded, she can do it through her glowing red eyes somehow. Father says this was actually just a warm-up, and now they'll get into round 1 of the actual game. He then explains the game's rules. Inside his briefcase are several weapons used in rebellious acts. Each round, without knowing which weapon will be next, one of the contestants will choose one of their friends, and together we'll figure out what the weapon is. The drones are floating nearby and shine spotlights on Judy and the others. Father says the first contestant is Horace and gives a bio on him and his anarchist origins, as well as a list of crimes he's committed against the government. He then asks Horace who he's going to choose out of his friends, and if he refuses, Please Hold will be killed. Holy shit. I honestly do not see a way out of this one. Episode 102, and the bag is on fire. Well, the spotlight's on Horace as he makes an impossible decision between which one of his friends will be tortured or killed. He finally gives an answer: himself. Father mocks him, saying, "Wow, you found a loophole. Only the smartest man alive could come up with that." He then reminds Horace that they're in charge here and has his wife start counting down. While she does, Judy, Ormel, and Maggie all try to convince Horace to choose them. Judy makes the most compelling case, telling them she's ready and has been for a long time, so reluctantly, Horace chooses her. Judy tells the rest of them to keep up the fight and then turns to the camera and starts yelling, "F the police and f the government." She continues into an epic speech about how resistance isn't just one person, a movement, or even an idea. Resistance is inevitability of the soul. Just as she finishes, Judy is struck with an arrow through the head. Holy hell, I didn't think they'd actually do it. Judy is dead. Horace freaks out, cussing up a storm. Father just talks about how cool it was, even though he didn't actually mean to shoot her in the head, and complains that now she can't make her pick. Either way, he moves on to round 2 and makes a note to his wife to cut out all of that revolution stuff for the live broadcast. The next contestant is Maggie, who must choose between Horace or Mel or Please Hold. She pleads with Father to just let them all go, saying she'll do anything. He seems actually disappointed at her groveling and tells her he's gonna need an answer. As the countdown begins, Mel and Horace try to convince Maggie to choose them, and we actually learn that Horace is 67 years old, which I don't think we knew before. Suddenly, a loud and horrific groaning noise echoes through the building, and Father says, "Oh, well, I guess we won't need the next weapon. You've done it now, folks. You woke up the baby." Episode 103. Volunteers. This episode starts off in a completely different setting. A man and woman with cat heads walk through the snow. It seems that this is their first mission together. We come in halfway through a conversation, but the man in the red mask says that his wife and child died. The woman wearing a yellow mask says that she was never married and actually volunteered when shit went down to try to save her parents. This is actually an interesting insight because it might explain why many young people like Sarah ended up joining the new government. The conversation is interrupted when they spot someone outside a cabin deep in the woods. It's worth noting that this seems to be a regular human without a mask, though their head is covered with speech bubbles. They spy on the person for a bit, and an all too familiar red dot appears in the eye of the man with the red cat head. We then see from his perspective heat signatures glowing through the cabin. It seems that he's using a drone and can somehow connect to it with his eye. He tells the woman to use her new voice trick and her eyes go red. She then uses the voice of the man collecting firewood to call out to the people in the cabin. Yep, if you hadn't pieced it together, it's pretty clear that this is mother and father once upon a time. I guess they got their abilities after joining up with the new government. But what the hell happened to them? We see one of the men come outside to look at his friend, and he's immediately shot through the head by a sniper, followed by his other friend in the cabin. After complimenting Mother on her accuracy, Father calls in his superior named Captain Tab and informs her that their mission is complete. She tells them that they'll be permanent partners from now on, and also that they need to come into the lab tomorrow to see something. The next day they head to the lab and peek through a glass window at something. Father asks, "How old is he?" referring to who's inside, and a lady in the lab, not sure if it's a scientist or Captain Tab, says that it's a tough question to answer. Technically, the subject is 17, but physically, they're a 29-year-old bodybuilder due to all the hormones they've injected them with. The subject is super aggressive and gets stressed easily. The woman says that the kid actually volunteered for this, and we see the silhouette of something huge in the cell, which is surrounded by children's toys. She then asks them if they're ready for this. It now cuts back to the present, and the loud groan from before rings out, followed by thunderous footsteps until finally the monster is revealed. It's a massive man with a strange cat head that has 6 eyes. He's covered in blood and holding hatchets, as well as wearing a pair of white overalls that look exactly like Please Hold's. The beast even says the words, "Please." So, was Please Hold a candidate for the same operation? Episode 104, The Chestnut Tree. Everyone's just like, what the actual f***, including Please Hold. Father greets the giant kid and tells him it's playtime as soon as Maggie picks the victim. Mother starts her countdown again, and Maggie is in complete distress. Mel tells her she knows the right choice. Horace is the only one who could save the world. He's always felt like he had nothing to bring to the table, and this is the real reason why he's here. This is how he matters. Maggie says she's so sorry, and honoring his sacrifice, she picks Mel. Horace begs her to say his name instead, not wanting to watch another friend die. Father tells Baby to go attack Mel using only his fists. Please Hold is really upset. Remember, Mel was the one who first learned to understand Please Hold, and as his death approaches, he tells the kid it's gonna be okay and that it's not their fault. He says if they manage to make it out of this, not to be bitter or vengeful, but instead live a free life. Baby walks up to Mel and raises his huge fists in the air when suddenly Mel's rope is cut and he falls to the ground. To everyone's surprise, someone is standing up above. It's Cass, the girl from the rooftops with her ears torn off, and she's got a bow and arrow. Father actually recognizes her because you may remember that there were drones flying around the rooftops, and now we know who they belong to. He commands Baby to attack her, but Cass says that's not his name. In fact, he's her big brother, and his name is Toby. Episode 105, Demons. Cass tries to talk to Toby and get him to remember her, but in the meantime, Father pulls out a shotgun and fires at her. Cass jumps out of the way, and soon Horace and Judy, while Judy's body, are cut loose. Some arrows fly out and take down the drones, and for the first time, Father looks a little worried, ordering Baby to come back and regroup. Next thing you know, he's shot in the hand and drops the shotgun. This surprises Mother, and Pleasehold uses the distraction to stomp her foot and get loose. Horace and Ormel slowly work their way out of the ropes, and Maggie has to brutally pull the nail from her hand using the hammer. Jeez. Baby, or Toby, looks stunned all of a sudden, and we find out why when Pleasehold climbs up his back wielding one of his axes and attempts to kill him. Cass cries out and shoots an arrow at the kid to save her brother. Pleasehold dodges it, and as they fall backward, Toby catches them by the foot and throws them through the town hall windows. Toby follows after to finish the job, but he's stopped by Cass, who begs him to stop. She doesn't know what they did to him, but she knows he's still in there. She reminds him about the hill they used to ride bikes down, the cartoons they watched, and how she kicked his ass at Smash Bros. Toby actually starts to speak, almost making out the name Cass. It seems like she's getting through to him, and she tells him he can stop and they can leave together. However, a loud thunk sounds nearby, and Toby looks back to see Pleasehold wielding the massive axe. It looks like we're about to get one hell of a battle. Well, I hate to say it, folks, but that's the first half of Season 4. Honestly, I was shocked at how crazy this season got so fast. It feels like we're so close to getting the whole story, but at the same time, there's so many more mysteries now. Like, what was up with the weird tribe at the beginning? What about that weird cat head spaceship in the future, and what the hell happened to Mother and Father to make them this way? As always, I really want to hear your theories in the comments below. There are actually 5 more episodes available right now on Webtoons, so if you want to see what happens next, head over there. Once the entire season is over and all the episodes are available for free, I'll finish up Season 4, but it'll probably be a couple of months until that happens, so please have some patience. Also, if you like this series as much as I do, please go join Mike Birchel's Patreon at patreon.com/MikeBComics. As I said, he's been doing a director's commentary on all of the episodes so far. It's chock full of behind the scenes info, so go check it out. Shout out to Kill Me Katie, as always, for the intro and outro music, which is likely playing right now. And if you want to see your art at the end of my videos, email me a submission to the address below with a name or social media handle. But I appreciate you guys watching at all. This is Grief speaking. Goodbye, friends.
Got to be friendly, no, just got to hold back, and I felt the notion to kill your delusion. I can't believe that you think you know him, and I'm nothing but organic pollution.
Sophie is the newest rescue in a house full of adorable furry friends. How cute. There's definitely nothing horrible hidden under the back porch. Well, I'm sure that Sophie will fit right in, as long as she can ignore the uncomfortable things she finds in the master's private room. Too bad the dogs can't remember anything before being here, or they could share fun memories like playing at the dog park, going to the groomers, or cuddling with their people. Their people. Yeah, they each had a different person before this, right? So what happened to them and how did they end up here? Oh well, they have food, water, and new friends, so who cares? Just remember to follow the rules, or the master may take you into the shed out back for punishment. But I'm sure you won't get into any trouble, will you, Sophie? Hello friends, this is Grief speaking. Today I'm covering the long requested Stray Dogs. I started noticing this comic suggested after I did the Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees video, and I get why, because it also has a cuddly cute aesthetic but is actually a disturbing horror comic. I won't spoil too much, but this comic has been called a mix between Silence of the Lambs and All Dogs Go to Heaven. That should give you a good idea of what you're in for. If you have pets, especially a dog, this one is particularly unsettling and tragic, but even if you don't, the horror speaks for itself. This is one of those comics I won't soon forget. Before we get into the video, I wanted to mention something else. You know I try to focus on lesser known media on my channel. Well, I recently had a few indie filmmakers reach out to me about a project they're working on, and I was blown away with what these guys are doing. They're working on a film called Limerence, a metaphysical rock opera and coming of age story. The director, Isaiah Marcotte, started filming when he was 16 years old and has worked on this film in his spare time for the last 10 years. The hardest part being the animation, which he's done entirely by hand. I've seen some of the animated sequences he's working on, and it's insane. It's more creative than any mainstream film I've seen in recent years. I just love this kind of shit. Creative people making things just for the love of the art. And I want to be really clear here, this is not a paid promotion in any way, and I have no affiliation with the project, other than I just really want to use my platform to promote cool shit whenever I can. At this point, Isaiah has 80% of the film complete, which is done on his own time and dollar. But there's a few more animated sequences left to do, and as you guys probably know, hand-drawn animation is extremely challenging and time-consuming. So Isaiah has started a Kickstarter to try and raise the funds to complete the film. If you want to support a true artist and be part of something really cool, consider backing their fundraiser when it launches on June 28th. They have some really unique perks like early access to the film and album and signed artwork from the production of the animation. I'll put a link to the Kickstarter below, so click the button on their page to be notified when it launches. But if anything, go watch the full trailer and you'll see why I'm excited about this. Anyway, let's get into today's video, Stray Dogs. Chapter 1, Good Girl. In a veterinary clinic, a woman in a red scarf sits with her little yellow Papillon named Sophie. They see the vet, and Sophie is clearly scared and shaking. Her owner is worried she's going to hate her after she gets this shot, but the vet assures her that first, it isn't possible for a dog to hate their owner, and second, their memory doesn't really work that well. They typically won't remember things that happened even a week ago. Sophie looks up into the bright light above as the vet says, "Don't worry, she won't remember a thing." This is some ominous foreshadowing of the horrors to come. Next, we see a house out in the country by a busy road. Inside are almost a dozen dogs who get excited when a van pulls into the driveway. Their master enters with a surprise, a new dog to join the family, a Papillon named Sophie. The master leaves the little dog to get acquainted with the others who aggressively sniff her. A German Shepherd enters the room telling them all to be cool and recognizes the little dog's uncomfort. He introduces himself as Rusty, and for a moment he wonders if he's met Sophie before, as she seems familiar, but the moment passes and he assures her that she doesn't need to be scared. Rusty then introduces the rest of the dogs to Sophie: Victor the Dalmatian, Gucci the Chinese Crested, Henry the Poodle, Other Henry the White Bull Terrier, Aldo a Mutt, Roxanne the Black Alaskan Malamute, Killer the Pug, Imogene a Tibetan Mastiff, and the oldest dog of the bunch, Earl, a Hound. They're all drawn in that charming Don Bluth style, which deceptively drops your guard before you realize what this comic is really about. Rusty, along with the other dogs, takes a tour through the house. They mostly hang out in what they call the sunroom that has a ton of windows and soft cushions. Then there's the living room, kitchen where the master eats, and of course the backyard where they can play and use the bathroom. Roxanne asks Sophie if she had a backyard before, and Sophie says she can't remember. Upstairs, Rusty points out the master's private room, which is locked. They believe this is probably where he keeps his treats. And finally, the bedroom where the dogs all sleep with the master. A little overwhelmed by all of this, Sophie accidentally wets herself. Gucci scolds her and the dogs all wander away, leaving Sophie alone to cry. Rusty comforts her once again, saying it's not bad here and that every dog here is a rescue, but the master would never throw her away like her previous owner did. She crawls under a piece of furniture and falls asleep until the master shows up and gives her some food. He also sees that she's cold and wraps a red scarf around her. The sight and smell of the scarf instantly brings back a horrible memory: her owner in the red scarf being attacked and choked by a man. She approaches the other dogs and tells them what she remembered: that their master broke into her lady's house and when she came home, killed her and then brought Sophie here. So now you can see what this story is really about: a killer. All the other dogs just call Sophie crazy. Rusty tries to defend her, saying she's just confused, but Earl gets pretty heated, saying this is all ridiculous. If the master was a killer, he'd be able to smell it, and right now all he can smell is bullshit. What a line. The other dogs agree, since Earl has been here the longest, and walk away. Rusty tries to be nice, but clearly doesn't believe her either. Before they can argue about it more, the master summons all of them to his room to go to sleep. So Sophie's forced to curl up in the room of the man she thinks killed her lady. As she lays down to sleep, the memory comes back once more. In the morning, Rusty tells her that he wants to help her. If the master did something like that, it doesn't hurt looking into it, and if he is a killer, then he'll get everyone out of here. Sophie looks at him puzzled and asks, "What killer? What are you talking about?" And that concludes chapter 1. A great setup, and it only gets more unsettling from here on in. Anyway, let's move into Chapter 2, Stay. Rusty tries to remind Sophie about her accusation, but she can't remember anything before she arrived here. The master gets up and lets the dogs out of the room, then stares at some photos. Rusty grabs the red scarf and brings it to Sophie, which finally triggers the memory of her owner being strangled. She asks Rusty more about the master's private room and decides that they should search it for clues. The master takes Aldo out for a drive while the other dogs look out the window in envy. Meanwhile, Sophie and Rusty continue to talk about the private room. Rusty says it's no use, the door's always locked, but Sophie tries to push it open anyway, and to their surprise, it does open up. I guess he forgot to lock it this time. The two dogs enter, and Rusty warns Sophie that if they're caught in here, they're gonna be in serious trouble. They look around the room to find a creepy sight. The room is filled with women's clothing, and there are a few weird items in the room like bolt cutters, duct tape, handcuffs, and rope, and what looks to be several driver's licenses on the desk. Yeah, this isn't adding up well. Sophie mentions the bad feeling in the room, and Rusty says he really wants to believe her, but the master is so good to them, it's hard to believe he could be a killer. The two are suddenly hit with a jump scare. A coyote stands wide-eyed with its teeth out in the corner, but it turns out to be taxidermied. Rusty points out the master is a hunter and tries to make it clear that this coyote is not a dog. Sophie starts digging through boxes, not even knowing what she might be looking for. Apparently, the master arrived home in the meantime, and he comes in pissed off. Sophie's hidden in the box, but Rusty gets a kick to the ribs and is sent out. Yeah, he really takes good care of you, Rusty. It seems the man has some business in the room, and as he locks the door, Sophie has no choice but to run and hide in the closet. The master sits at his desk, and it seems like he's working out some sort of script, trying out a series of introductions involving the dogs. It's like he's acting out a situation where he uses one of the dogs to meet someone at the park. It's pretty creepy and a big clue as to what this guy is up to. Sophie retreats further into the closet and unfortunately bumps into some boxes that come crashing down. The master opens the closet, and the sight of his feet triggers another of Sophie's memories. Her owner taking her to the dog park for the first time. Sophie's having a hell of a time running around when she bumps into none other than the master. Back in the present, he reaches down to grab her when an even bigger crash sounds from somewhere else in the house. Rusty has broken a lamp, probably in an attempt to distract the master and save Sophie. Well, it works, and the man puts Rusty on a leash, then takes him to the shed in the backyard. The dogs watch from the window and tell Sophie that Rusty is getting punished, implying that something horrible goes on in that shack when the dogs get in trouble. We see a passing of time focused on Imogene the Mastiff, who seems to just stay in the same spot all day. Before bedtime, the master sends the dogs outside to the bathroom. Gucci scolds Sophie for getting Rusty in trouble, and the dogs all start gossiping about it. This is the first time I realized that Victor is missing a leg, but we'll touch more on that later. The master lets Rusty out of the shed, and he's limping with one arm clearly bruised. He asks Aldo what he did with the master while they were out, and Aldo says that they went to the dog park and that they met a lady and another dog. Then they went on another ride where the master took pictures of the lady. Right. Sophie then pulls out a photo of a woman that she took from the closet and asks Aldo if it's the same one they followed. It's not, but at the side of the photo, Roxanne is visibly shook. Apparently, this is a photo of her lady. And that's how Chapter 2 wraps up. Chapter 3, Lie Down. Sophie explains to Roxanne that there were more pictures of women in the private room, not just hers, and is determined to get back inside to prove to the other dogs what's going on. Rusty's skeptical that the master is a killer and points out that all they really know is that he takes pictures of women and collects junk. Roxanne speaks up, however, and says that he did in fact kill her lady. Seeing the picture triggered a fuzzy memory of her and her owner cozy on the couch when the man entered, and she can't believe she forgot about it. That butthole hound dog Earl chimes in, saying she didn't forget because it didn't happen, and Rusty tells him to keep moving. Sophie speculates that maybe they all had previous owners and that they forgot them. She tries to think of a way to keep the memories, and Rusty is once again playing defense for the master, causing her to finally snap at him. Just then, the master arrives home and the dogs rush in for food. Roxanne stays outside after smelling something strange, and Rusty and Sophie join her. They find an opening under the porch and follow Roxanne underneath. Victor the Dalmatian is curious what they're doing and joins in as well. At the far end of the crawl space is a disturbing sight. 3 small mounds of dirt, as if something was recently buried here. Roxanne freaks out and starts rapidly digging on one of the spots, while Rusty tries to convince her that they need to go inside before the master realizes, but it's too late. The man finds the open hatch under the porch and shines a flashlight inside. Luckily, the bunch of dogs hid in an empty grave. hole that hasn't been filled yet. Inside, the dogs are barking, waiting for their food, which causes the man to head back inside. They climb out of the hole and Roxanne starts digging again. Victor can't climb out without help because of his missing arm, and worse, the hatch is now closed and locked, trapping them inside. Rusty and Sophie start desperately digging a new hole to get out and are a little peeved that Roxanne isn't helping them, instead continuing to dig up one of the mounds. Inside, the master notices Rusty and Roxanne missing from the bunch, and in an intense scramble outside, they help Victor out of the hole and out from under the porch. They show up just before the master gets too suspicious, although they're covered in mud. The other dogs are like, "What the hell happened to you guys?" and Sophie screams out that they found graves. Earl immediately rejects the idea, saying all they found was dirt, and tries to downplay the whole situation. But Roxanne found something while digging, a small piece of clothing. The dogs all sniff it and decide they don't know what it is, but Victor actually never looked at it. Once he smells it, he's struck with a terrible memory. He's stuck in a burning apartment building and is rescued by a firefighter, although he suffered a terrible burn on his left leg. I guess we know how he lost it now. After getting patched up, the woman who saved his life decides to adopt him, but tragically she's brutally attacked in her house while Victor is tied up, unable to help her. With this shocking revelation, Victor tells the other dogs they need to get out of this place right now. He remembers the emergency button on the phone and says they can press it to get help. The other dogs are skeptical since they can't actually talk to humans, but Victor assures them that they'll come anyway as long as they call the number. So the dogs awkwardly call 911. Meanwhile, Earl isn't happy about the situation and sneaks off to warn the master. Downstairs, Victor is barking like mad at the receiver. A dispatcher answers the phone just in time for the master to show up. He tells her it was an accident and that his dog accidentally knocked the phone down. No problems here. He hangs up and then silently puts Victor on a leash and takes him out back. The dogs all watch out the window and the master leads Victor towards the punishment shed. The dog desperately rubs his head on the master's leg in a final plea. Then, in a shocking and heartbreaking twist, he doesn't take Victor into the shed, but behind it. And soon after, the sound of a gunshot rings out. The dogs all look out the window in horror, and that concludes Chapter 3. Chapter 4, Play Dead. This chapter starts off with Earl as an adorable puppy and the master giving the cute little critter a snack. Eerily, if you look in the background, this is clearly a woman's bedroom. In the present, Earl sits loyally by the master as he eats breakfast and looks at more women he stalked. All the other dogs are staring at him from a distance, looking pretty scared. Earl says just because he looks at photos doesn't mean he's a killer. Meanwhile, the man is putting on leather gloves, preparing a large duffel bag and heading out, presumably for his next victim. Apparently, he hasn't fed the dog since Victor died either. Sophie breaks into tears, believing he's going to kill all of them eventually. Earl is so stubborn he won't even admit that Victor was killed and assumes he's in the punishment shed and defends the master against Sophie's accusations. In the living room, the dogs are thrown off a little when they see Imogen walking around, which is quite unusual for the silent dog. Sophie continues to lay into Earl, exposing the fact that he can't remember what happened before he lived here either, and has likely forgotten his previous owner. The fight is interrupted by Rusty, who says he remembers his original owner now too, and more so that the master definitely killed her. The dogs comfort him and decide they need to get the hell out of here. Earl warns them that they better not try to run, and Sophie snaps back at him saying, "Or what, you'll rat us out like you did Victor?" The other dogs are shocked at this realization, and for the first time, Earl seems less confident and guilty. The dogs head out to investigate behind the shed, and do find a patch of dirt that smells like Victor. Earl watches from inside, and as he walks in the hall, he gets a strong push from Imogen when she walks by. Outside, the dogs smell more of Victor's scent coming from inside the shed itself. Maybe Earl was right, he's actually just locked inside. Luckily, the master left it unlocked, and Sophie enters despite the fear and warnings from the others. She enters and the dogs watch in concern from outside. Then Sophie comes out in tears and panic, telling them all to run. Whatever she's seen in there must be unspeakable. She says they need to leave immediately, but the other dogs are curious about what the hell she saw and entered the shed. Inside, Victor's skin is hanging from hooks on the ceiling, along with several other dogs' faces. It's a complete horror show. There's a workbench with several bloody teeth and what appear to be eyeballs, as well as a bloody axe on the floor. The dogs all run like hell, attempting to break through the fence and then resort to digging, but unfortunately it goes deep into the ground. Inside, Earl's curiosity gets the best of him and he walks into the master's private room. He sniffs around and encounters the stuffed coyote. The other dogs try to get out of the front door, but of course it's locked, and outside the master is arriving back home. Meanwhile, Earl follows his nose nose to a cabinet in the private room, and upon looking inside, his memory triggers and he finally is confronted with the truth. The memory consists of the cute puppy Earl and the master giving him snacks in a girl's room. She arrives home and the master kills her while Earl eats up the snacks, none the wiser. He brings Earl home and introduces him to his other dogs, a completely different set. The disturbing reality is that Earl may be the oldest dog here, but he wasn't the first, and the implication is that the master has slowly killed them all off. It also tells us the sheer volume of victims he has under his belt, both human and dog. Back in the present, the master comes up behind Earl wielding a shotgun, and in the cabinet we see what triggered Earl's memory. The heads of all the past dogs, including Victor, have been cut off and mounted as trophies. And that wraps up chapter 4. Let's move into the final chapter, chapter 5, Bad Dog. It kicks off right where we left off. Earl is livid at the realization of who his master really is and is growling fiercely. The master tells him he knows the rules. You never come in this room and you never show him your teeth. But Earl isn't having it. He leaps onto the master and takes a big bite out of his neck. At the same time, the gun goes off and we see the other dogs hiding in the pantry who just heard the bang. Earl comes running out of the room with blood still dripping from his mouth, and right behind him, a shotgun blast fires through the wall. As he passes into the living room, he warns Imogen to run. Then he bolts down the stairs and tells the others the same. But right behind him comes the master. Before he can take another shot, however, Imogen, that beast of a dog, lunges at the master, knocking him down the stairs. He lands at the bottom in a pool of blood, but the dogs don't have time to see if he's dead. They need to get the hell out of here. But remember, they can't get out the front door and are completely trapped. So Earl takes the lead and jumps through the sunroom's window, shattering the glass. He falls onto the lawn with a thud, covered in cuts and glass sticking out of him. I think it's safe to say that Earl has more than redeemed himself at this point, damn. They all make their way out through the window except for Sophie, who wants to go back for her lady's scarf since it's the only way for her to remember. But when she turns around, she finds the master is getting back up. She's frozen in a moment of terror and has a flashback of that day at the dog park. In the meantime, the master has retrieved his shotgun, smashes out the front door, and fires off a shot that hits Roxanne on her back leg. She urges the others to keep going, but with the fast cars passing on the street, they just can't get across. In the meantime, the master moves in on Roxanne, reloading the gun. Just then, Sophie, that little badass, jumps from the window and takes a bite out of his leg. Unfortunately, the man kicks her, and the dogs are left helpless as the cars speed by. Then, in one last courageous act, Earl jumps out into the traffic to stop the cars. He gets smashed by a car, causing a pileup and leaving him crumpled on the side of the road. The dogs all surround him, and Sophie asks why he did it. In his last breath, he simply says he remembered, before passing on. The dogs all howl in their grief over the loss of Earl. Meanwhile, one of the drivers makes their way out of the car, asking the master to call 911. Of course, he's standing there covered in blood and holding a shotgun. So all the dogs start barking, trying to warn her not to go near him. She ignores them and walks towards him anyway, but as she approaches, he removes his hand from his neck, revealing the gory wound that Earl gave him, then collapses onto the ground, dead. And that is the end of this man's killing spree. Later, we see the police arrive, and it seems that all the people in the pileup are okay. If you look close at this panel, you'll see Aldo mourning Earl as they zip his body up, and in the background, Killer the pug is peeing on the master's body bag. Now that's funny. The dogs are desperate to tell the cops that the guy is a killer, but of course they can't speak to them. However, they brought a canine unit, so the dogs tell the canine where to look, and he leads the officers to the porch where they can find the buried corpses. Despite all the horror, it seems like these dogs are going to be okay. Sometime in the near future, Sophie is running through the park when she runs into Rusty. However, the two don't remember each other, but they have fun playing while their owners talk. Through their conversation, we get the sense that they're good people. When they leave, Sophie hesitates for a moment, and her owners make a joke about Rusty, asking, "Is he your boyfriend? Do you love him?" But eventually they need to leave. However, they don't call her Sophie, they call her Trudy, and that is the end of Stray Dogs. But we can't end it there. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Stray Dogs' prequel anthology comic, Dog Days. In some ways, it's actually more disturbing than the main story because Dog Days is actually recounting all the other dogs' pasts, most of which include their owners being killed and their subsequent kidnappings. There's only 2 issues, news, and I'll do a quick rundown of each character, starting with Killer the Pug. This story is a bit of a cute misdirect. Killer hears someone at the door and believes there's a monster coming. His girl walks in and behind her is a menacing figure. Turns out that this is not the killer, but his owner's boyfriend, who calls himself the Cuddle Monster when he plays with Killer. It's clear that the little guy adores him, and he wasn't scared of the monster, but excited. Next is Gucci. She has her own Instagram account where her owner posts cute photos of her in a variety of outfits. However, this section ends on an ominous note when the last photo posted on the account is from the sister of Gucci's owner, saying that Gucci and her sister have gone missing and to please contact her if they know anything. Aldo's story actually takes place at the killer's house. He finds a really cool stick, and Killer the Pug is jealous. So he goes and digs up what he believes to be his own cool stick and wants to trade. The thing is, it's not a stick, it's actually human bones. Next is Other Henry, the White Bull Terrier. This section mostly features Henry and a cat named Monster that he doesn't get along with, mostly because Monster is always spontaneously attacking him. Then it cuts to the sad night when Henry's dog mom is being attacked by the killer while he's locked in a kennel. Meanwhile, Monster hides under some furniture. Later at the funeral, Monster doesn't understand why Henry is gone. The cat walks over and sadly curls up in Henry's dog bed. Okay, that one's just sad. Speaking of sad, I think Imogene's backstory is really tragic. We see her as a cute little energetic puppy. She's full of life and energy, always making messes and greeting strangers. Just a furry bundle of joy. Then the killer appears one night and takes her after killing her owner. It seems that Imogene was the second oldest after Earl, since all the other dogs are different. Imogene lays on the floor and we see the time pass. It's clear that the tragic event she went through sucked the life out of her. What once was an energetic and enthusiastic puppy is now a lifeless and broken dog. And the worst part is, she can't even remember why. Next up is Roxanne. Her owner wakes up in the middle of the night to a ruckus and thinks someone is breaking in, but it's actually Roxanne who knocked over a vase and is playing with the plant. The woman yanks it from Roxanne's mouth and says that the plant was from Mom's garden and that Mom is gone now. It's unclear to me if this is implying the owner's mom died or her wife or girlfriend died. It depends on whose mom it is, but either way it's pretty sad. She takes Roxanne to the groomers for a bath the next day, and on the way out is approached by the killer and Rusty. The woman can smell something fishy's going on here and rushes to her car to leave, but we already know what happens next. Okay, that wraps up part 1 of Dog Days, so let's tackle the final stories in issue 2. Starting with Henry. Not Other Henry, but Henry, the poodle. This one is also kind of a big misdirect. We see the killer breaking into a house as usual, but this time he gets more than he bargained for. A dog comes out that's not Henry, and this is a ferocious little guy. He bites the killer multiple times, and the woman calls the police. Finally, the killer retreats and runs out into the rain. Kind of satisfying watching this guy get his ass kicked again. While he hides in a nearby alley, he suddenly spots a woman walking her dog. Henry the poodle, in fact, and we can guess what happens next. Next up is Sophie. Yeah, now that I think about it, we never got her full backstory. Like in the main story, Sophie is at the dog park with her owner when she encounters the killer, but this time we see a little further and learn that he brought Rusty along. This is why Rusty thought Sophie looked familiar in the main story. They had actually met. He tells Sophie that he's a rescue and says that dogs who have ladies always get rescued because the master likes that kind. Knowing what we know now, this innocent dialogue is pretty creepy. Eventually, Sophie's owner picks her up to leave and the killer watches them, asking Rusty if he wants to go for a ride. Our next dog is Earl. We already got a little bit of his backstory, but now we get to see a little more after he arrived at the killer's house. There's a dog named Laney who's saying some very similar stuff to what Sophie will eventually say, asking everyone how far back they can remember. Earl is asking another dog about when they get treats when they find the master in the kitchen getting ready to leave. He's packing up some zip ties, a knife, duct tape, and some dog treats. Right before he leaves, he gives Earl a treat and calls him a good boy. No wonder he ends up being so loyal. And last but not least, we get some backstory on Victor, the three-legged Dalmatian. Apparently, he was not adopted by the firefighter, but the fire station itself. And after a fire goes bad, one of the men is pretty upset and takes it out on Victor, saying it's not the 1800s, they don't need a Dalmatian. But Renee, the woman who saved the dog, assures Victor that this mean man actually loves him. Fast forward to the present after the events of the main story. We see the killer killer's house run down with the word murderer spray painted on the side. A vigil begins to grow out front out of respect for those he killed. Next, we see Renee's funeral and the disgruntled firefighter from earlier giving a beautiful eulogy. Later, the fire department burns the killer's house down, and we get a better look at the vigil outside, which is filled with pictures of the dogs and their owners, including Victor and Renee. And that wraps up Dog Days and the entirety of the Stray Dogs series. There's a lot to be said about this comic. It's genuinely a great thriller, and the main characters being dogs isn't just a novelty or a gimmick, it's the perfect tool for this kind of story. I love that they use the real limitations of canine memory as a major plot device. It was used very well here, and it's also just pretty sad, the fact that these dogs can't remember anything. Even the ending is a little bittersweet because yes, Sophie has a nice new family, but she doesn't even remember her old name and forgot about Rusty as well. I should also point out that I had no idea what this comic was about when I first read it. I knew it was supposed to be disturbing, but didn't really know why. I was so naive that I actually thought that Rusty was going to be the villain somehow at first. He just comes off like the typical character in a horror movie that's nice to the final girl, but is later revealed to be the killer. That's how far off I was from the actual story, which was great because I was sucked into the slow reveal as to what was going on. It's also interesting that the targets aren't just the women, but the dogs. I noticed on a second read through that there are no repeat dog breeds, and given that the killer mounted all the dog heads, it seems that he's actually trying to slowly collect every breed. Kind of brings into question whether the dogs are simply a side project to go along with his killings, or if they're actually his main goal. Like I said, there's a lot to talk about here, but what did you guys think? Anything interesting I missed? And did you cry when Earl sacrificed himself? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to check out the Limerence movie Kickstarter and give the trailer a watch. As always, thanks to Kill Me Katie for the intro and outro music, which is likely playing right now. And of course, big shout out to my patrons for helping support the channel. If you want your name displayed at the end of every video like these fine people, consider joining the Patreon. But I appreciate you guys watching at all. This is Grief speaking. Goodbye, friends.
I guess it's the feeling it's over. I guess I don't know my own pain. I feel so much less as I'm older. It's okay, just don't say it out loud.
Hello friends, this is Grief speaking, and today we're diving into Harrow County. This is a series that's been showing up in the comments pretty much since I started covering comic books on this channel. Now that I've actually read it, I completely understand why. It is right up this channel's alley. It's really got all of my favorite things wrapped into one graphic novel. A folk horror setting, disturbing creatures, and beautiful watercolor artwork combined to make one hell of a horror comic. It follows a farm girl named Emmy who's had some strange things happen to her leading up to her 18th birthday, and it all seems to connect to the old oak at the edge of her farm, the place where a powerful witch was once hanged and burned. I don't want to give too much away, but trust me, this is a must read in the horror genre. It's a pretty long running series, and so in this video I'm just going to be covering the first two story arcs titled Countless Haints and Twice Told. It actually works pretty well because there's a complete story being told in these 8 issues, and it's a good stopping point. But if you like it and want me to do more, let me know. Before we get into it, I want to mention that I recently started memberships on my channel, and we've been doing Grief's Movie Club. We recently did Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein and Pan's Labyrinth. So if you want to get in on the discussion, check out the membership options. Anyway, that's enough jabbering. Let's get into the comic. This is Harrow County Explained. Part 1. We start off right in the drama. Sometime in the mid-20th century South, the people of Harrow County are putting a witch to death. But she's not dying easily. Hester Beck has been shot, stabbed, beaten, and finally hanged by the neck. And when the priest went to give her last rites, the rain washed the words from the pages of the Bible. We learn that at one point she was a beloved part of this community, curing frailties and ailments with incantations. However, it seems that it came at a cost, as the farmer's livestock began dying in Hester's presence, and she often met with the local children in the creek, giving strange sermons and baptisms. She also had blasphemous congress with heinous things out in the woods. The people turned a blind eye to all of this, but could not ignore her actions anymore when they discovered how she fed her vile companions and strengthened her own gifts. Here we see a disturbing panel of Hester crouched and clutching a crying infant, seemingly snatching it from a family in the night. Now, hanging by her broken neck, the witch still breathes, and finally, they light her on fire to finish the job. As her face melts away, Hester warns them that this is not the end, and that she'll be back one day to see them all once more. The years have passed, and we can see the tree Hester was burned at still left with an ugly mark from the flames. In the background sits a humble farm, and here we meet Emmy as she wakes up from a bad dream. A dream of that awful tree and the terrible things hidden beneath its roots. She can almost hear the screaming of Haints. She can't see them, but she knows they're there. Countless haints surrounding her bed. If you're unfamiliar, haint is a southern term usually meaning evil spirit or ghoul and is thought to be a variation of the word haunt. Funny enough, it's most commonly heard in the term haint blue, a paint color used to paint porches, ceilings, and doors in the South. This was originally done to ward off haints by tricking them into thinking they were seeing the sky or water, which they traditionally couldn't cross. Obviously, this is all folklore, but it's still a common practice today, and many swear that it's actually a good deterrent for spiders and wasp nests. Okay, that was one hell of a detour, but I just found that fascinating, and you'll be hearing that word quite a bit in this comic. Anyway, Emmy glances out her window to see the old tree. She knows nothing of the witch and has been told instead that it was struck by lightning, and shortly after, it rotted and hollowed out. Strangely, the townspeople decided to fill its hollow with concrete. Emmy hated and feared this tree, and we get a good look at why as she recalls her nightmare. Shown in dazzling, vibrant watercolors, the nightmare tree has jagged teeth and tries to uproot itself from the ground, all while shouting lies, lies, lies on repeat. She convinces herself that it means nothing and that the tree's just normal, but even so, she dreads falling asleep again. The next day, Emmy talks with her father Isaac as they approach the barn, and it's clear that they have a loving and playful relationship. Emmy tells him she has some name ideas for the new calf, but her father tells her not to name them. You don't want to get attached to the livestock. When they enter the barn, they see a grisly sight. The mother cow is moaning furiously, and on the ground lay a calf covered in blood. Another calf is nearby, and this one is for sure dead. Not only that, but it looks mutilated or deformed. In fact, it seems to have 6 legs. Isaac says they need to end the suffering of the injured calf and leaves to grab his shotgun. Meanwhile, Emmy comforts the poor dying animal. Isaac loads his gun, but before he can even enter the barn, something miraculous happens. Emmy comes running out, and walking beside her, perfectly fine, is the young calf. Her father can't believe his eyes, and Emmy comes up with a name for the little guy, Shaky. Later, Isaac is burying the calf that didn't make it when Emmy asks him why so many have been born like that. And apparently between all the animals, this has happened a dozen times. Livestock dying. Sounds a little familiar. Their conversation is interrupted, however, when a wagon comes onto the farm. Emmy recognizes it as a man named Raya who sells odds and ends and often stops to bring her new books to read. His daughter, Bernice, is around Emmy's age and they get on pretty well. As the two girls talk, we learn that Emmy is about to turn 18 and Bernice asks if she plans on leaving this small town, but she feels obligated to stay and help her dad on the farm. Meanwhile, Raya and Isaac have a kind of cryptic and eerie conversation. Raya notices the many graves of the animals and questions if something is going on. He seems to connect it with Emmy coming of age soon. Isaac refutes what Raya is implying, saying that he hasn't seen any signs like curdled milk, smell of sulfur, and Emmy hasn't said anything about having weird dreams. Raya agrees that Emmy seems normal enough, and Isaac gets a little defensive, saying she is normal, and after what they did all those years ago, she ain't coming back. Raya says he believes him, but if he's wrong, if he's missing something, that girl will have her revenge on all of them. Okay, well, clearly these two were part of the mob that killed Hester Beck, but how does Emmy fit into all of this? The next day, Emmy goes for a walk in the woods by the farm. She's played in these woods her whole life, and they seem to stretch on forever. As she crosses the old rickety bridge over the creek, Emmy spots something on the bank, a boy. She calls out to the boy who's covered in dirt and holding a stuffed rabbit, but he doesn't reply. Instead, he runs the other way. Emmy chases after him, warning him to be careful because he's headed right for an overgrowth of thorns. Sure enough, she finds the massive tangle of thorns and a dark opening in the middle. Worried for the boy's safety, she climbs in after him, scratching her hands and slicing a nasty cut into her cheek. Finally, she comes upon a trail of blood and crawls on to see where it leads. What she finds on the other end is pretty shocking and grotesque. The skin of a boy hanging from the thorns, dangling and covered in blood. Even more terrifying is that his lips twitch and the skin tries to talk. His breath like a slaughterhouse. She looks in horror, another haint whispering its secrets to her, trying to warn her of what's to come, of the power within her blood, and the terrible darkness that comes with it. Part 2. Next thing we see is Emmy shoving the bodiless skin suit into her satchel, telling it to be still as it wriggles to try and slip free. She describes his skin as warm and sweaty. Gross. She knows exactly what she's found. A haint, deathly pale and gravely silent. The restless ghosts of Confederate soldiers searching by the moonlight for body parts. The spirits of children who got lost in the woods and starved before finding a way out. But now, Emmy had found one for herself, a real-life haint. She actually seems excited about this and surprisingly unfazed at the living flesh she now holds. Kinda makes this whole thing even more creepy. She gets back to the farm and runs to her room. She needs to change out of her bloody clothes before her father sees and doesn't want the skin boy to peek at her while she changes, so she shoves him in her bottom drawer. Okay, that's pretty funny actually. A few minutes later, her father knocks on the door and asks where she's been all day. She just tells him she went on a walk and mentions getting cut up pretty bad on some thorns, but when she looks down at her hands, the scratches are gone, and the big cut on her face is healed up as well. Isaac gives a concerned look and tells her to help him outside when she gets the chance. After he leaves, Emmy wonders how the scratches healed so fast. She tells the skin boy he'll have to stay in the drawer for a while and to be good while she's out helping her pa. Outside of Emmy's window, we can see a bloody handprint, like something was just watching her. That night, she has another dream about the tree. People are gathered around the old oak, cold and quiet like haints themselves. It can't be a good thing coming back to this place after what we done, one of them said, but they heard crying like that of a baby coming from the oak. So they chop into the swollen tree trunk and inside find a strange sight. A small child naked as if coming out of the womb. One of these people is Isaac, Emmy's father, and his wife, who pulls the child out from the tree and says that she can take care of it. Shortly after, they find another girl in the tree and say that it looks just like the first, beautiful. Only in the dream, she's hideous and decayed like a corpse. This is actually some interesting foreshadowing. Emmy wakes up with a gasp to the sound of rattling. The skin boy is making a ruckus in the bottom drawer, and Emmy pulls him out, asking what he wants. He manages to mutter out the word window, and Emmy walks over to look out at the old tree. She sees the silhouettes of people gathered there and asks the flesh how he knew. The skin replies, but not directly, saying that the pact must be honored. 18 years and she's showing signs. Emmy quickly realizes that the haint is telling her what the people are saying at the oak tree, and he continues, though we only get fragments of the discussion. They talk of the witch that they killed and the pact they made. It seems Isaac is amongst them and says that it's not the same girl. He raised her. This is his daughter. Emmy wonders how the skin boy can hear what they're saying when he's here with her, and we then get a look at the tree where a red figure sits in the branches. On a closer look, it seems to be the boy's body removed from its flesh. I have to say, that's a fascinating and disturbing concept. The skin boy continues repeating the words, "The witch must die." Isaac heads home and enters Emmy's room, only to find it empty. Outside, Emmy has donned her coat and satchel and is running into the woods in a panic, tears in her eyes at the realization of what her father plans to do to her. She travels into the darkness with her lantern drawn until she hears a presence nearby. Luckily, it turns out to only be Bernice, who seems to be on her side. She was actually looking for Emmy to warn her about the mob that's coming for her. Emmy flips out. She just doesn't understand any of this. Why would her pa want to hurt her? Bernice takes her hand and says they need to keep moving. She doesn't know much herself other than overhearing her father talk about a witch and a birthing, and some sort of agreement to kill her. As they move along, they find themselves in a clearing, and on a closer look, it appears to be a very old graveyard. The grave markers are so old that the words have worn off. The people buried here are forgotten, and Bernice suggests that maybe they were meant to, that she had heard about old cemeteries hidden in the woods where folks buried undesirables. The word sparks suspicion in Emmy, and she questions whether Bernice led her here on purpose, but the girl pushes back, saying she came here to help her. Suddenly, they both hear a voice whispering from Emmy's satchel. The skin boy is saying, "Not alone. Never alone." The girls look around to find flaming skeletal corpses crawling out of the ground and surrounding them. Part 3. The flaming spirits stand behind the grave markers where they were once buried and soon start moving in on Bernice and Emmy. Just before they reach them, Emmy demands that they stop right there, and strangely, they listen to her. She says that if they really wanted to hurt her, she thinks they would have done it already. She shouts at the creatures, asking them why they don't have anything better to do than try and spook people. As she yells at them, the haints actually seem to fear her, and this is the thing that scared Emmy more than anything else that night. With the skeletons at bay, the two girls move forward, but the flaming ghosts block their path as if trying to stop them. Emmy commands they move aside, and finally they leave the creatures behind. What Emmy doesn't know is that these beings were actually trying to help her, and if they had mouths, they would have told her not to go that way. Soon they see lights ahead and realize that the mob is close by looking for Emmy. Out from her satchel, the skin starts speaking again. She couldn't have gone too far, she's just a girl. Tracks lead this way. It seems that the boy's body is stalking the group and repeating what they say again. And we get a glimpse of skinless legs leading the group away from Emmy. After what happened in the graveyard, and now her talking satchel, Bernice is starting to wonder about Emmy. Maybe what they said about her is true. Maybe she is a witch. Emmy denies this, but out from behind her walks Isaac, and he says that it is true. Every word of it. Emmy sees the look in his eye and the shotgun in his hand and tells him to stop whatever he's thinking of doing. Tears well up in the man's eyes and he tells her not to speak, saying he doesn't want to kill her. He puts his shotgun down and approaches her, saying it's good that she doesn't know and that she'll be gone before she realizes what she truly is. He suddenly begins to strangle her, his own daughter. Bernice tries to push him off, but he throws her aside. He continues choking Emmy, crying and saying he's so sorry. Bernice sits with her head in her hands, feeling completely helpless when she spots a disturbing sight, a saggy hand reaching out from the satchel. It can't do much to stop Isaac, but the boy's body can. Out from the trees jumps the skinless body of the boy, who pounces on Isaac and starts beating the shit out of him. Emmy describes it as an angry, ferocious thing that's stronger than 6 men. As it wallops the old fool, the boy's skin can be heard from the bag saying, "Get away from her, don't touch her, and she's under our protection." Watching this with bloodshot eyes and grasping her bruised neck, Emmy considers for a moment letting the creature finish the job, killing her old man like he tried to kill her. But she eventually tells the boy to get off of him. She tells him she's not what he thinks she is. She's not a monster. She's not evil. The battered old man says, "No, not yet at least," and the skinless boy makes a horrendous screeching noise at him. It's almost a jump scare when you turn the page and see his horrifying face. Emmy tells the boy that he's done well, but to leave them be for now, and he scutters off into the woods. Emmy angrily walks over to her father and asks for the truth. So Isaac tells her everything, how they killed the witch Hester Beck 18 years ago, and how she promised she'd come back. As he speaks, the thought of ending her father comes back to Emmy, as if the spirit of Hester's revenge has taken control for a moment, but she snaps herself out of it and backs off, deciding she can't stay here. She tells Bernice to look after her father and make sure he's alright, and as she leaves, she tells him to leave her alone. Like she said, she's no monster, but she can be. Walking alone in the dark, the anger in Emmy recedes, and now she feels nothing but shock and sadness in its wake. Finally, she breaks down into an ugly cry. These woods were full of twisted evil things, countless haints, and it was terrifying to think that she could be one of them. But that doesn't mean she was in full communion with these ugly things. There are some creatures dwelling in the dark and lonely spaces that would never accept her and would kill her the moment they laid eyes on her. Emmy passes an old broken down wooden shack, and inside we see a large black creature that straight up looks like a demon with 4 goat-like eyes and horns. Part 4. Emmy continues crying and walking through the dark woods, and the great beast follows behind her, muttering the words, "Not again." The skin then warns her that something is coming, something old, and she turns to spot the monstrosity leering at her. It's worth noting that in the opening to this comic, Hester is seen communicating with this same beast in the woods. He speaks in a really weird way, kind of like Middle English mixed with a southern dialect. I won't try to do the voice out of fear of embarrassing myself, but he asks Emmy if she really doesn't recognize him, and says that it's like pouring salt in the wound. Emmy tells the beast to step into the light, but she's met with the creature's huge arm batting her lantern to the ground and breaking it. He tells her that she doesn't command him anymore and accuses her of leaving him here alone. She said she promised to come back and he figured her a liar, but now he realizes that she really forgot him. He screams this in her face in a terrifying display of his prowess. Emmy backs away and runs as fast as she can from the monster. He cries out after her to come back and not to leave him again. Emmy sprints through the woods and out onto the road where a pair of headlights greet her. A man gets out that she recognizes as the town's pharmacist, Mr. Sorrel. He was a kind man with a soothing voice, and seeing her shook with fear out in the darkness, he offers to give her a ride to town. She takes him up on it, but before they hit the road, the man pulls out a rag presumably covered in chloroform to knock her out. It seems he has other plans for Emmy. Emmy comes to, and the first thing she sees is the disturbing sight of Mr. Sorrel's face. At first, it's all distorted, noted, and the watercolors are used really well here. It just looks really off-putting. She's tied to a chair, but Sorrel tells her that this is all for her own good. He says he's honored to have her here in his home, and Emmy screams at him for kidnapping her. He refutes this accusation and actually says that he's just following her orders. He says that he's only doing her bidding, and that's why they're all here, although some of the flock has gone astray. He goes on to explain, and we see the story unfold in a flashback. Sorrel tells Emmy that she is the witch Hester Beck reborn, the same woman who was birthed up from the earth all those years ago. There's a kind of unsettling image of the witch crawling out of the mud like an Uruk-hai from Lord of the Rings. When Hester first came to be and offered to help the townsfolk, she was rejected. So she went to the woods and called up the Haints from dark places to protect her. Still, she felt alone, and finally, using blood and dirt, she raised men and women from the soil. They looked by all means to be ordinary people, and she sent them to live amongst the country folk. She blessed them with free will so that they would cherish the lives she had given them, but soon their faith and loyalty turned to hate and fear. Eventually, there was dissent amongst her creations. Some of them thought Hester to be a creature of evil. Others thought they would never fully be alive until their creature was dead. Mr. Sorrel finishes his tale and tells Emmy that they are her children. Despite his creepy-ass demeanor, Emmy believes the pharmacist is telling the truth. Maybe she is a witch, and that would explain everything that's been happening to her. She then realizes that this means she should also be able to control him. She commands Sorrel to let her go. He's happy to see that she may be taking her place as the reborn witch, but refuses to let her go, saying he's blessed and has a sacred mission. He points to his ear, which is all closed up and swollen. He says before the witch was hanged, she told him she would come back, though she may not remember who she is. She gave him the task of reminding her when she awakens again, and to not let anyone dissuade him from this task, even herself. It's pretty disturbing. As she whispers this to him, a tiny snake comes from the witch's mouth and crawls into his ear, leaving it all bloody. So I guess this is why Mr. Sorrel, despite claiming to be Emmy's loyal follower, won't listen to her commands until his mission is complete, to convince her she truly is Hester Beck. As he speaks, we can see a dark figure entering through the window in the other room with yellow piercing eyes, and before Sorrel can figure out what it is, the skinless boy pounces on him, screeching and violently attacking him. Emmy says that she obviously doesn't need protecting, but that he did help her remember who and what she is. Next, we see the rest of the mob who meant to kill Emmy coming up with a plan to try and find her. It's weird to think that these people are actually made from mud by the witch. Isaac tries to make the argument that Emmy is good. She could have killed him and had every right to do so, but she let him go. She might have come from the witch, but she's not the same. The others say it's too late to let her go. She knows they want her dead and will want to get them first. Just then, Emmy herself walks in. She tells them she knows the truth, even if she doesn't quite understand it all. She comes to ask them to accept that she's not the woman they killed. She wasn't raised to be like her, and all she wants is a normal life. She figures that's what they all want, and they thought killing the witch might have granted that. She doesn't even blame them for being scared, but the fact is she's not Hester. She doesn't want to hurt anyone. One man interrupts her speech, saying it's a trick and that they should kill her now while they have the chance. A handful of angry people agree and attack her, but Emmy raises her hands in defense, and the people are hit with a bright light, turning back into dirt and falling to the floor. She shouts at the remaining people that what she created, she can also end. If they try to kill her, she'll take them with her. Later, Emmy sits in her bedroom and her father knocks on the door asking for a word. He tells her how sorry he is. He was so afraid that he lost his senses and he let the others convince him it was all true. But he realizes now, even if she is the witch reborn, she's her own woman too. He swears he won't let anyone hurt her. She's obviously going to take some time to get over the fact that he tried to kill her, but she thinks he really does love her. The months pass and things seem pretty much back to normal. Well, as normal as they can be in Harrow County. There are still plenty of Haints hiding in the hollows. Would they seek her out for guidance or some darker purpose? Emmy sits on the porch when a wagon pulls up to the farm and a young family asks for her help. Their child is sick and the pharmacy has been closed up ever since Mr. Sorrel went missing. Emmy says it's good they came to her. She tells them to come inside and that the kid will be just fine. It seems Emmy has embraced her gifts and is using them to help others. It then jumps to a large city. A butler brings some tea to a high-rise apartment. He greets a woman standing by the window saying, "It's a lovely morning, isn't it, Miss Cammy?" The woman agrees, saying, "How could it not be? After all, it's all hers, isn't it? The city, the world, all of it." She turns around and we see that the woman is the spitting image of Emmy. Part 5. As Emmy looks out into the beautiful green pastures of Harrow County, she can't help but feel lonely. She walks back to the farmhouse to find baskets of gifts and food from the townsfolk. She's actually a little annoyed at this point, saying it's too much and a lot of it will go to waste if they keep it up. But her father doesn't mind, saying he won't have to butcher their livestock if they keep getting food like this. Upstairs, Emmy finds the skin boy has slithered out of her satchel and onto her bed. He doesn't like her going outside without him, but she can't keep him with her all the time. She lays on the bed next to him, saying she wouldn't mind having a normal life now and then. After a pause, she reminds herself that she's currently having a conversation with a dead boy's skin. The people in Harrow County continue to ask for Emmy's help with various problems, including matters beyond their understanding. A strange creature has been spotted at the granary, turning any grain it touches to rot. Emmy checks it out and finds the haint hiding in the rafters. It kind of reminds me of the gremlin on the plane in the Twilight Zone movie. It actually seems to recognize Emmy in some regards, saying that it knows her, but she looks different. Emmy's friendly to the creature, asking its name. It says it has none, and Emmy says that they'll just have to change that. But first, they need to talk about why it's scaring folk and how to settle it down. Emmy comes back down to the others and tells them once every couple of weeks to leave rotted fruits and veggies up there, and in return, the creature will take care of rats better than any barn cat. Oh, and her name is Priscilla. Her and her pa leave the granary, but encounter an angry-looking fella by the name of Jim Webb. He asks Emmy if she could help him sort out a problem. He thinks his wife has eyes for another man, a younger man, and he asks Emmy if she would afflict the man with an illness. He even implies she could kill him if necessary. Emmy is disgusted by the request, but Jim says isn't that what she does? She's been helping people, yeah, but there has to be some kind of balance. She tells him firmly that she doesn't hurt people. It's not who she is. But if he bothers her again, she might change her mind. Jim doesn't seem to be happy about this and gives her an angry glare. Later, we see Emmy walking through the woods. Years ago, Hester Beck was the mother of Haints, calling them to serve her. But after she died, they were left orphaned until Emmy rose up to take her place. She passes through the cemetery of undesirables, and the flaming skeletons try once again to block her path. But she says she knows what she's doing. Coming upon the old wooden shack, she calls out to the great beast that she encountered that night. She leaves some food for him, and as she lays it on the ground, the monster speaks, saying she shouldn't have come here. He says she turned her back on him, and now she has no control of him. He could gut her where she stands and use her innards to sop up the blood. Well, Emmy's a brave soul and opens the door to see the monster. She says that he was created by Hester Beck, but now he's his own creature, something Emmy can understand. The monster says he has learned to live by himself and appreciate the silence, so why is she here bothering him? Emmy says that seeing as how he broke free from Hester, she's wondering if the other Haints will do the same. The monster thinks that it scares her. What if these Haints turned on her? But Emmy was actually asking more for herself. Could she break free from Hester too? Back at the farm, Bernice has come by for the first time since that night in the woods, and her and Emmy are glad to have each other's company. Bernice wonders what everything means though. Her own grandpa Raya was one of the people made from the mud by Hester, so what does that make her? You know, I didn't really think of that till now, but yeah, that's kind of a weird thought. She's the offspring of a fake person to some degree. That's gotta mess with your head. Emmy says that she's just another one of Hester's creations as well. She doesn't know what that really makes them, other than friends, if Bernice still wants to be. It starts to rain, and seeing as the storm is coming in, Emmy invites Bernice to stay the night. While they discuss it, a car pulls up to the farm. A nice car. Emmy's excited to see who it is, and is shocked when she sees the woman climbing out. It's Cammy, her sister and spitting image. Maybe Emmy isn't as alone as she thought. Part 6. As the storm rages on, we can see the body of the skin boy hiding grumpily under the porch from the rain. Inside, Isaac tries to make conversation with Cammy's butler, but he's getting nothing back. Meanwhile, the girls huddle up on Emmy's bed, and she's excited to talk to her long-lost sister. Apparently, Cammy grew up in the city, and as soon as she found out about Emmy, she started traveling here. Bernice questions if they really know their sisters, but Cammy says they have the same birthday and look alike. She then rudely tells Bernice not to interrupt. Emmy defends Bernice and says that everyone's been through a lot around here. Cammy says it's been hard for her too. She's left wondering why she was taken from her birthplace and never got to know where she was from until now. But Emmy says that now she is here and she has a sister to help her through it. The next day, early in the morning, Cammy wakes up Emmy and says they need to go on a walk. Leaving Bernice to sleep, they run out to the oak tree in their nightgowns. Cammy's got a big grin as she sees the tree she was birthed out of. The tree where, as she puts it, they killed her mother. Emmy is quick to deny Hester as her mother and says that her mother died when she was young, referring to Isaac's wife. Cammy says that she also grew up with someone who called herself her mother, but that she was a cold woman who didn't care for her. But now she knows about her real mother who was murdered here. She gets excited, saying that Hester was buried right here, and she bets they could dig her up without hardly trying. It's a really unsettling sight seeing Cammy dig into the dirt with a big smile, hoping to unearth the witch's corpse. Emmy softly tells her that she really doesn't want to do that, and Cammy, covered in mud, hugs her sister and says she's glad they found each other. At the same time, the body of the skin boy creeps out from the tree, hissing at Cammy. She's not surprised by it and instead just says, "You've got a familiar too," like it's a dog or something. Cammy leaves and Emmy goes back to sleep, waking up late that day. As Emmy eats breakfast, we check in with Cammy, who's gotten all done up for a walk about town. As she does, everyone greets her, assuming it to be Emmy, and she doesn't really correct them. At the local diner, Jim Webb spots Cammy walking by, and thinking that it's Emmy, grabs his steak knife and begins to stalk her. People continue greeting Cammy with big smiles, and in the reflection of a storefront's glass, she notices she's being followed. She confronts Jim and tells him that she must be confusing her with someone else. She asks him what he was planning on doing with the knife he's hiding and makes him hand it over. Funny enough, he doesn't hesitate to hand it to her. Cammy calls him out for attempting to attack who he thought was Emmy and wonders why he would do such a thing and how she can help make it right on her sister's behalf. So he tells her the spiel about the young man coming onto his wife, and Cammy says that she can help him with that and that they're gonna be great friends. It cuts to a man walking up to a cottage with flowers in hand. He calls out for Celia, and it seems that this is Jim's wife and her suitor. The woman comes out and tells him it's not appropriate for him to keep coming here, but something seems horribly wrong. The man drops the flowers and grabs his face in agony. She gets a better look, and it's a terrible sight. His face is covered in boils, and plants are growing out of his mouth and eye holes. He cries out in pain and runs away, clutching his face. That was the last time anyone ever saw him. It seems Cammy granted Jim's wish and afflicted him with something terrible, turning him into yet another haint. Cammy is looking to be bad news. Part 7. This issue kicks off with Cammy taking a stroll through the woods with a smile as always. She walks up to the wooden shack where the great beast lives and says it's a beautiful day for a picnic. She calls out to the monster saying she'd love to have a chat with him and has her butler start setting down a blanket and food. The beast thinks it's Emmy, but Cammy quickly corrects him and says that they've never actually met. She then says she's pleased to make his acquaintance and invites him to join her. She then pulls several plates out of the picnic basket and it's all rotten and covered in maggots. Plus her wine glass is filled with pure black liquid. She starts eating a rotten chicken wing and tries to convince the monster that they should be friends. Meanwhile, Emmy walks about the farm trying to fight off a looming sense of dread that she's had since Cammy showed up. She finds her father in the barn and asks if he needs help. He says that he could use the help of 10 men, but didn't want to ask her since she's so busy. Emmy says that she could create the men to help him. In the blink of an eye, she could make them out of thin air, so he could rest. He says that, yeah, she could, but she won't. He knows her well enough. She wants things to stay the way they were before all of this. I wonder if Emmy really could do that. Makes me wonder what the extent of her powers are. In the woods, Cammy finds another haint in a dark puddle of goop. She says she could smell its stew pit as soon as she entered the county. The monster rises from the puddle, and it's a hideous creature, a skeleton with strange growths and covered in the black stuff, which Cammy calls bone sauce. What a foul-sounding term. She then says she just wants to be friends, and she can help fill its pit till it's overflowing. Next, she comes upon a clearing with a partially tilled patch of farm and red eyes watching from the dark tree line. She beckons the red-eyed creatures out, and they're even more disturbing than the last haint. Human corpses, or rather their rotting skin, which is filled with rats. They look like zombies kind of, but are only being moved by the many rats inside. Definitely the creepiest of the haints so far. Cammy tells them that since they've taken the shapes of men, they shall work like men, and commands them to plow the field. But first, she'd like them to come with her to tend to man's other business. I guess the way to befriend them is by treating them like the men that they're inhabiting. At the farm, Emmy is putting out the laundry. She's not completely unaware of what's been going on, and has sensed that Cammy is up to no good. She wishes she could hide away from everything, but she has responsibility now, and a flock to tend to. Whether she wants it or not, she would fight to protect them. The skin boy's body shows up to talk to Emmy while his skin is hanging on the clothesline, which is a kind of morbidly funny image. It seems Emmy has had him spying on Cammy. She says she's glad they're friends, and asks the haint if the others are as loyal as him. He says that some are, but not all. She tells the boy that he knows what to do then. He's no longer her spy, instead he's her ambassador, and sends him off into the woods once more. At the same time, Cammy is continuing her own quest for loyalty. In an old abandoned farmhouse, she finds 3 haints that kind of look like a cross between an old witch and a giant crow. She tells them to quit hiding and go do what they were meant to, commanding them to take to the sky. As the night falls upon Harrow County, Emmy walks to the edge of the wood and stops when the skin boy tells her that Cammy is approaching, and that she's not alone. Cammy runs up and hugs Emmy, telling telling her about all the wonderful creatures that she's encountered. Emmy throws her sister off and says she knows what she's planning on using them for, and she won't stand for it. Cammy knew she might say something like that and remarks that these gifts are wasted on Emmy. She believes Emmy should have been dragged away from here. She declares that this is her home and plans on taking it back. Behind Cammy is a small army of Haints, including Jim Webb, ready to fight for her. Part 8. So it happened. On a night much colder than it ought to be, the Haints came for Emmy. Various ghouls, ghosts, and monsters surround her. She tells them to back off, but Cammy tells her she can't control them any longer. They only listen to Cammy now, and she offers Emmy one last proposal to join her so that they can rule together. You know, some real Darth Vader shit. Tears form in Emmy's eyes at these words. She feels sadness realizing how close she was to having a sister, someone who understood her, but she can't go along with Cammy's plans. Cammy doesn't seem to care that much and says, "Oh well, then you better start running." With no other options, Emmy runs deep into the woods. And Cammy tells her butler that she trusts him the most. If these specters can't teach her sister a lesson, then he must finish the job. The butler asks what Cammy will do, and with a devilish grin, she looks at the farmhouse saying she has her own way of punishing her sister. Once again, Emmy finds herself sprinting through these familiar woods. She crosses over the rickety old bridge, Haints hot on her tail, and one of the boards breaks, slowing her down quite a bit. She barely manages to get across and grabs her satchel, but the tarry bog monster is close behind her, saying he's gonna squeeze out all of her bone sauce for his bath. There's that phrase again. I kinda like the ring of it actually. Makes me want to make a hot sauce called Grief's bone sauce. Anyway, right before the creature can cross the bridge to her, the creek water splashes up and destroys the bridge. I guess she did this with her witch powers. Unfortunately, one of the flying bird Haints swoops in and knocks her to the ground. As the other creatures all move in, it looks like it's over for Emmy. But she has a plan. She knew Cammy wouldn't chase her herself and would leave the ghosts to do her business, just as she'd known her whole life that she was never truly alone. Up from behind her, Emmy's own army of Haints rises up, including the creature from the granary, the flaming skeletons, and of course the skinless boy. She yells out to Cammy's monsters, taunting them to come and get her, and says don't they dare keep her friends waiting. Oh hell yeah, a goddamn ghost battle. We get a badass series of panels of the monsters all fighting each other in beautiful watercolor glory, and Emmy makes her escape. However, she's cut off by the butler. He starts attacking her, saying he would never do anything to hurt his mistress, but by killing Emmy, he can pretend even for a moment that he's free. Man, even Cammy's closest companion hates her. The butler is inches away from grabbing Emmy when out from the trees, the great beast from the wooden shack emerges with a massive roar, pinning the man to the ground with his huge fist. Emmy asks the monster why he helped her and wonders why he didn't throw in with her sister. He answers in that odd voice, telling her not to presume to understand him. He recognizes now that Emmy isn't the same as the old witch. She doesn't seek to control the Haints, but cohabitate. Cammy thought she could manipulate the beast in the same way she did the others, but this monster is an older, unnatural spirit. The beast sums up why he didn't join Cammy in one sentence. She invited him to a picnic. Okay, that made me laugh, but it actually explains it all in a very concise way. Back at the farmhouse, Emmy rushes inside, yelling at her father that she's being chased. They have to bar the doors and keep the Haints out. He looks out the window and doesn't see anything. Meanwhile, Emmy has a sinister smile and grabs his shotgun. Okay, something isn't right here. She asks him if having a gun like this makes him feel powerful like her, being able to end a life with the twitch of a finger. She aims it at the back of his head and pulls the trigger, but nothing happens. The real Emmy then barges in. It seems she knew Cammy may do something like this and must have emptied the shells from the gun. With the jig up, Cammy reverts back to herself. I guess she used magic to take on Emmy's clothes and hairstyle. Emmy accuses her of doing all of this because she's jealous and she wants to hurt her, because Emmy actually has people who care about her. Cammy assumes she's talking about her father and reminds Emmy that he's not even real and that Hester made him out of dirt. She says that Isaac is no different than any other creature, just like that slithering skin Emmy keeps around. Cammy's then interrupted when the floorboards break and the roots of the oak tree spring out, grabbing hold of Emmy and dragging her under the house and toward the tree. Kinda reminds me of Evil Dead. After pulling Emmy all the way to the tree, the roots let her go. Cammy follows after her sister and accuses her of being scared of seeing their mother's face. Once again, Emmy denies the witch of being her mother. Cammy says that the only person who really cared about them is buried in the ground, and how can Emmy deny her? Her eyes wet with tears, Emmy cries out that if Cammy wants her so bad, she can have her. Just then, the smoldering corpse of Hester Beck drags itself up from the earth, and Cammy, for the first time, feels the dread that Emmy has always felt. She cries out for her sister's help as the rotted cadaver grabs her by the hair and starts pulling her into the ground, until finally, they're both gone gone back into the earth. Emmy kneels on the ground next to the twisted soil, and despite everything Cammy did to her, she says she's sorry. Some time passes, and Emmy and her father are rebuilding the damaged floor that she was dragged through. She tells her dad that she could close her eyes and make things good as new if she wanted, and they wouldn't have to do so much hard work. Isaac says he doesn't mind the work. It reminds him that it's real, that they're both real. Emmy asks her father if he thinks that everything that happened with Cammy, if she made it happen somehow. He says honestly, he doesn't know, but he's glad that that girl's gone. Emmy goes outside to fetch some more wood, and we get one last narration about how, at the moment, the ghosts of Harrow County had scurried back to their graves, the place where all dead things lurk, dreaming of a time when they might live again. On the final page, we get one last ominous look at the old oak tree that Hester and Cammy reside under, and that is the end of Harrow County, at least for now. Well, there you have it, guys. Harrow County. I honestly love this series so far and would love to cover more of it, so let me know and I'll make another video covering more. I just love the setting, using old southern folklore as a basis, and it's cool to see a witch story that feels more based on the early history rather than the pointy hat Halloween kind of witches. What did you guys think, and what was your favorite haint? Let me know in the comments. Shout out to Kill Me Katie as always for the intro and outro music, which is likely playing right now, and if you want to see your art at the end of my videos, email me a submission to the address below with a name or social media handle. But I appreciate you guys watching at all. This is Grief speaking. Goodbye, friends.
Wake up tomorrow just to feel guilty. After what happened, you're still barely talking. I close my eyes just to see what I'm missing. After tomorrow, you won't even.
Sam and Maggie are the ideal couple living in an ideal society. Sam brings home the bacon and Maggie keeps the house nice and tidy along with her other wifely duties. And don't forget their furry companion Winston, who just seems so sleepy these days. Everything is fine, and look at those giant cat masks, adorable. Everyone's pleasant here and safety is guaranteed with a camera at every corner. Be sure to put poison in your garbage before taking it to the curb to deter any pests. And if you see any suspicious activity with your neighbors, be sure to report it to the authorities immediately. Everything is fine. You may have a few questions like, why are their eyes glowing red? Why is there a distinct absence of children? And what the hell is going on in the neighbor's basement? Well, I suggest you forget all about it. Remember, everything is just fine. Hello friends, this is Grief speaking, and today we're going to be doing a deep dive on the webcomic Everything is Fine by Mike Burchell. I've seen this one suggested in the past, but was worried it would be a massive undertaking since there are 3 parts and each part has 30 episodes. On top of that, the comic is not complete as far as I can tell, and I wanted to do the whole thing. So I stupidly shelved it before I even gave it a chance. However, recently I made a post asking what you wanted me to cover, and Everything is Fine was the top suggested comic by quite a bit. Well, I have to thank you guys because I couldn't put it down, and honestly, it's become one of my favorite comics I've covered so far. I decided the best way to tackle this would be to do it in parts in the same way that the comic is divided up. Today, I'll be covering part 1, and if you guys really want me to, I'll do part 2 and 3 as well. So if you enjoyed this video, like and comment to let me know you want more from the series. A couple of notes about this comic before we get into it. This series can be very cryptic. It doesn't spell things out directly and leaves a lot of room for mystery. But when secrets and world-building lore are revealed, it is all the more satisfying. Honestly, I think the author uses what we don't know masterfully to keep the suspense high. So if you're a little confused at times, don't worry, there's some great payoff along the way. Secondly, this is the first comic I've covered from Webtoons, which has a unique format. The parts are called seasons and the chapters are called episodes, so that's why I'll use that language as we move through. Anyway, this intro is way too long, so let's get into the comic. This is Everything is Fine Explained, Part 1. So let's get into part 1 titled The New Forever. It begins with a man named Sam waking up on a beautiful day. He makes his way downstairs and finds his wife Maggie making some bacon, although it looks like she was daydreaming and burnt it to a crisp. Sam tells her he loves her and talks about how sweet she is. It's here we see Sam and Maggie's faces for the first time. Oddly enough, they seem to be covered in large cat masks. You know I love a good mask, but this just feels off. They have a lighthearted, stereotypical conversation about Sam's work. work. He's complaining about the grind, but says, I guess I have to play the game if I'm gonna get this promotion. Maggie questions this mentality, wondering if playing the game is really the best way. She says, you can play roulette all you want, but at the end of the day, who owns the casino? Obviously, she's hinting at something bigger than Sam's work, and after a brief pause, he simply answers in that 80s sitcom style, "Hun, you know I'm no gambler, you silly Billy." He leaves for work and stops just short of the door and looks back at his wife, telling her the cryptic words, "We need to forget." She tries to say more, but he harshly shuts her down and heads out. This initial conversation may be confusing, but trust me, this comic is well worth the subtle unraveling of its mysteries. Maggie decides it's time to feed their dog Winston. However, his food bowl is completely full. Either way, she dumps it out and refills it. She calls him to come eat, and we don't get a good look at him. He seems to be sleeping in his dog bed in the other room, unmoved by her voice. Maggie sits down to have a cup of coffee, and after looking at it, she sees what looks like a face appear, then immediately throws the cup on the ground, saying whoops, as if this was an accident. Once again, she calls Winston to come lick it up, and he refuses to move. Actually, seeing a little more of his body, are those flies around him? She continues to call his name, and we finally get a good look at the poor pup and find he's dead, his corpse rotting and face eaten by maggots. And that's how the first episode ends. It's a stellar opening to the series in my opinion. Something is horribly wrong, but we don't know what. Only that it seems like this couple is forced to pretend that everything is fine. So let's move into episode 2, Swings and Roundabouts. Maggie sits at a park in the rain staring at some empty playground equipment. Nearby, another woman sits doing the same, and they exchange a glance. Then she gets a call from Sam, and it seems like he doesn't want her spending time there. Later, Maggie does some shopping. The store is in pristine order, with every aisle perfectly stocked and security cameras at every turn. Maggie reaches for a can of tuna, the only one that happens to have Japanese characters instead of English, something she spots as unusual. As she looks at it, a man approaches her from behind, scaring the crap out of her. Turns out to just be her neighbor from across the street, Charlie. He asks about the tuna can after getting a look at the unusual label, but Maggie redirects the conversation, not drawing any attention to it. She asks him if he's been doing okay since she hasn't seen him around lately. He just says goodbye and leaves abruptly. As he leaves, Maggie notices that his cart has a large amount of aluminum foil in it. Weird. Back at home, Maggie unpacks the groceries when she's greeted by her next door neighbors, Linda and Bob. They engage in typical small talk that feels completely generic and void of anything real. Then Bob invites Maggie and Sam over for dinner tonight. Just then, Charlie pulls up and starts walking into his house. Bob shouts over to invite him to the party as well, and he's clearly uninterested. He says he can't, he's busy working on his model train set in the basement. And Bob asks, are your trains really as important as neighborly bonding, or is there something else you're doing in that basement? It sounds eerily like a threat, and Charlie hesitates to answer. Then his left eye glows red. Maggie, Linda, and Bob's eyes glow red as well, and shortly after, Charlie agrees to join them for dinner. Well, that was spooky. What the hell just happened there? The overly joyful conversation continues like the strange exchange never happened, and Maggie looks up at the nearby lampposts, each of which has several security cameras mounted on them. It looks like every square inch of this neighborhood is under surveillance. Episode 3, Mom Spaghetti, opens with Maggie cooking a red sauce on the stove. Like with her coffee, she sees a face in the sauce, which pops and splatters onto her cheek, looking a little like blood. Sam arrives home, snapping her out of a daze, and the two enter into a conversation fitting for a couple in a 1960s sitcom. Sam looks around for Winston and clearly stumbles upon his dead corpse. He enters the kitchen, however, only saying that Winston seems off and hasn't touched his food. He asks Maggie to take him to the vet tomorrow, and the two sit staring at each other for a few seconds before she finally agrees to do so. This comic really does earn its title. There's a dead dog rotting in the living room, but everything's fine, right? Before dinner, Maggie asks Sam to take the trash out, but before he does, he dumps rat poison in the bag. I guess they have a rodent problem. When he approaches the garbage can outside, he hears a rustling noise, and from behind the can, something peeks out and groans. The entity reveals itself to be another person asking for help. He's got a cat mask on as well, but it's all torn up with chunks missing, and we can see a human mouth underneath. The dirty man begs for food and asks if there are some scraps in the garbage that haven't been poisoned. Kinda seems like this is the reason Sam put poison inside in the first place. Sam just says nothing and drops the bag before going back in. Inside, he pretends the whole thing never happened and starts up another boring conversation about work. Then suddenly, the creepy man outside appears by the window. It actually works as an effective jump scare because of how this comic is formatted, which is hard to pull off in this medium. He starts talking through the window, saying that the trash smelled like poison and asks if he can have some of their spaghetti. He says he hasn't eaten in days and will probably die soon. Sam and Maggie just stare at each other silently. Then their eyes glow red. Sam says he believes Winston wants to go outside for a bit. He walks over to the dog's body and picks it up. He carries it outside and drops it on the sidewalk, saying, "I love you, boy." The man outside seems excited about a dog, and especially that it's not poisoned. He thanks Sam as he heads back inside. They sit at the table in silence as the sounds of their dog's body being eaten passes through the window. Needless to say, they don't finish their meal. Episode 4, Mise en Place. Bob is getting everything ready for his dinner party tonight. He sings a lighthearted song that seems somewhat ominous given this setting. The table is set and it all looks perfect. Next door, Maggie is holding Winston's collar at the foot of the bed. She's in her underwear and she has a tattoo on her thigh. Normally this wouldn't be worth noting, but it stands out since so far, everyone has looked like they're right out of an Old Navy catalog. It's striking to see someone's human body. Sam walks into the room dressed up for dinner and suggests that Maggie put the dress he left out that matches his blue tie. She points to it and to Sam's surprise, it's all cut up. She calls it old-fashioned and had her own dress in mind. Sam is at a loss for words at the sight of his wife in such a striking red dress, but eventually tries to talk her out of it, thinking it may be a bit over the top for dinner. Maggie is dead set, however, and has Sam zip her up. There's kind of a heated moment where Maggie says, "It's been a while, huh, Sam?" and he feels her back a bit, I guess suggesting that they haven't knocked boots in a while. However, it's hard to tell if this is of their own will or if this society that they're a part of doesn't allow it. Eventually, Sam says that the dress doesn't match his tie, and Maggie shoots him a cold-ass look, saying, "Then get a new tie," before walking out of the room. Bob and Linda talk before the guests arrive, and Bob admires the sunset. He does mention that the smell is getting through though. Maybe it's nothing, but I think that's actually another little clue. I mean, what kind of smell is he talking about? Anyway, Linda asks if they are good to go through with the plan tonight, and he confirms. Across the street, Bob spots Charlie emptying several boxes of aluminum foil in his garbage. Okay, there's the aluminum foil again. Episode 5, Had to Be There. Sam and Maggie arrive at Bob and Linda's house for dinner, and as a joke, Sam says that traffic was brutal, even though they obviously just walked here. Bob doesn't get the joke and they awkwardly walk inside. Then Bob comments on how stunning Maggie looks and makes a bad joke about wife swapping. He then makes a passive aggressive comment about how it gets chilly in their house and that Maggie might want to cover up. It's clear that he's hinting at the fact that Maggie's cleavage is exposed. She bluntly declines despite Bob's insistence, and when Linda asks about Winston, she straight up says he was eaten. Yeah, it looks like Maggie is sick of the superficial nature of this society. In a panic, Sam tries to save face, but then Linda says she knows exactly what Maggie means. After an uncomfortable pause, she says, "Winston is just so cute you had to gobble him up," followed by a bunch of fake laughter. She asks if she can get them a beverage, and Maggie immediately says vodka, which just made me laugh, but Sam quickly chimes in and asks for 2 waters instead. Linda leaves the room along with Bob to help her, and Sam uses the opportunity to talk to Maggie. He says he understands that everything with Winston was tough, but they just need to keep going for her, and she agrees. Okay, so it seems that this whole Pleasantville charade is an act they're forced to put on for some reason, but who is the her they're talking about? Well, we'll get to that later. So the two couples sit and banter about their lives. Bob mentions going to a hardware store, but can't remember exactly which one. It's actually a bit of world building here because it implies that there are multiple hardware stores in different sectors of the city that are all basically the same and are just called hardware stores. They also mention several other businesses with generic names as well, including what they call the Art Factory, which indicates that art is just manufactured and mass produced. Anyway, there's a knock at the door and Charlie has arrived. Bob ribs him about not dressing up and they all sit down. Linda asks if anyone wants anything and Sam replies, "Just water for me, I have to drive home after all," continuing his bad joke from earlier. Linda and Bob laugh like it's the funniest thing they've ever heard, to the point where it's kind of eerie, but Charlie and Maggie stay silent and exchange a glance. Episode 6, Friends for Dinner. At dinner, the group discusses their occupations. Charlie's job is to move boxes to point 4, and Sam's department does paperwork for points 7 through 10. It gives us a more vague idea of the strange structure of the city. They ask Bob what he does, and he says that he works at the box incinerator. The entire table goes quiet, and they all glance at each other. Okay, now I really want to know what's in the boxes. Linda brings the food out, and before they eat, Bob thinks that one of the guests should give a spontaneous declaration and volunteer volunteers Maggie. She gives a bizarre speech saying, "My name is Maggie of neighborhood 147D. Before this delicious meal, I feel spontaneously compelled to offer my thanks. I'm thankful for my husband's diligent work that provides for us and the fulfillment I find in my own household duties. I'm thankful for the government that keeps us healthy, protects us, and feeds us. I'm happier than I've ever been." Then everyone at the table says, "We are the happiest we've ever been," in unison. Yeah, this has real North Korea vibes. The fact that they all knew what to say at the same time at the end makes it seem like this was not such a spontaneous declaration, but rather a rehearsed one. There's an interesting detail shown when they start to eat. The cat mouth on the masks opens up like an automatic door, and you can see the real human mouth inside. Pretty creepy. Linda then mentions a place called Lakeview, a little town up north that's supposed to be wonderful. It's right by a big lake surrounded by nature. Bob says they've been thinking of moving there. They talk about how only good folk get to go that are honest, friendly, and loyal. Bob says we all know how to show we're loyal, right? There's a tense moment and he continues. He mentions Barbara, who lives down the street, and how he caught her digging through their trash can the other day. Linda says they don't have anything to hide, but if Barbara were to call the police and it's her word against theirs, they would appreciate their neighbors backing them up. And of course, Bob and Linda would do the same for them. With all of them looking out for each other, it's more likely they can all go to Lakeview eventually. Bob and Linda finish by eerily asking the other three if they would join them. Episode 7, Peep Show. Charlie and Maggie exchange a look at each other, and then Sam pipes up saying that he and Maggie think it's a swell idea and that they're stronger as a group. Charlie reluctantly agrees as well, and Maggie excuses herself to the bathroom. She looks in the mirror and is hit with a red image of the swing set at the park, as well as the Winston scenario and the face she saw in the red sauce. In this image, the face begins to speak, saying, "We need to forget," and then she sees an eye pop up in the sauce, a human eye. After only seeing cat heads, the realistic eyeball is quite frightening. She snaps out of this vision with a knock on the bathroom door. It turns out it's Charlie, and he asks her a bizarre question. "Do you like trains?" Apparently she once mentioned to him that she used to help her father with his model trains when she was younger. He then asks her if she wants to see his train set, specifically his new model, a Flying Scotsman. Maggie says her and Sam would love to see it sometime. This seems to throw Charlie off, and he asks if he could talk to her in the bathroom for a moment. Once they're inside, he locks the door, and he asks if only she could come without Sam. He works nights, so she could come by in the day. She hesitates, but actually agrees. I'm not sure what's going on here, but it kind of seems like she's about to play with this dude's Flying Scotsman while her husband's at work, if you know what I mean. Behind them is a strange piece of art hanging on the wall with a small hole in it. On the other side, Linda is looking through, spying on them. Everyone heads out, and while saying goodbye, Bob mentions Lakeview again, hoping to see Sam and Maggie there. Linda ominously states that she thinks they'll all be there real soon. Episode 8, Echo Julia. The next day, Sam heads to work, and shortly after, Maggie heads over to Charlie's house. Inside, Charlie has no furniture, only a cardboard box with a TV on it and a foldable chair. It's pretty depressing, actually. Charlie quickly ushers Maggie toward the basement, but stops short of opening the door. He says that the basement, his trains, it's all a bit much. After she sees it, she may want to run away, but he asks her to trust him and let him explain once they're down there. She agrees, but as he opens the basement, his doorbell goes off. He reluctantly opens the front door and finds a police officer outside. It's kind of cute. He's got a mustache on his cat mask. The officer's very polite and asks if he can come inside. Charlie starts to decline, but then his left eye glows red and he says, "Of course, officer, come right in." The officer's name is Tom, and he continues the polite conversation inside with Maggie. Tom asks if there's anyone else inside the house and says he needs to have a little chat with Charlie. Charlie agrees, but says that Maggie was just leaving. However, Officer Tom tells her to stay. He asks Charlie a very important question he wants the answer to. What's in the basement? Episode 9, An Iron Voice. Charlie tells him he just keeps his model trains in the basement, and Tom asks to have a look. Charlie says that Maggie had nothing to do with this and asks if she can leave. The officer says she needs to stay because he wants her to see this, but if Charlie does anything crazy, it'll affect her too. Maggie tries to say that Charlie is a good man, and Tom cuts her off like a dick, saying, "I'm sorry, ma'am, did I ask you to speak?" Alright, I hate this guy. Tom goes to take a look in the basement, and Charlie apologizes for getting her involved. He says when this is over, forget all of it. Don't be like me. Tom reemerges from the basement and asks Maggie if she knows what's down there. She replies honestly that she has no idea, and Tom says good, let's keep it that way. Charlie begins to beg the officer not to do this, but Tom says this is just the way things are. He then declares, "Charlie Harris of Residence 398 in neighborhood 147D, the state finds you guilty of conspiracy to undermine the optimal functions of society." Maggie is shocked and tries to defend Charlie once more, but Tom shuts her down again, giving her a final warning, or else she'll be found guilty as well. He continues with Charlie, saying, effective immediately, he's designated red status. He must vacate his home and may not speak to or interact with any other citizens. Charlie tries to convince Tom not to follow through with this and begs him to stop, saying they can just act it out instead. Then he says, her name is Charlotte, Tom. Whatever that means. Tom tells him there's just no going back. He pulls out his phone, which has a profile on Charlie with all of his information down to his weight and height. He hits a button to change Charlie's status to red, and immediately Charlie's eyes glow. He screams in terror as if experiencing something truly horrific, clawing into his face in the process. As he cowers on the ground, Officer Tom tells Maggie that now she can leave. Episode 10, Forget Me Not. Sam's alarm goes off and he wakes up bright and early to get ready for work. However, he'll be making his own breakfast since it looks like Maggie is sleeping in, and I guess this has been the case for the last 2 weeks. She eventually gets up and goes about her morning, bathing and brushing her teeth. She puts her toothbrush up and then suddenly sees a third red toothbrush in the holder. She tells herself to forget, and the brush vanishes. In the mirror, she sees a replay of Charlie begging Officer Tom not to do it. He once again says her name is Charlotte, but this fades away and Maggie tells herself to forget once again. She sees Winston's food bowl and another face in her coffee, but repeats the word forget, causing them to fade. This continues throughout her day as she sees various images that shift back to normal, like the tuna can with the Japanese characters, and a painting in her house that had 3 flowers changing to show only 2. She continues to repeat the phrase as the pages turn red, and she laughs maniacally like she's losing her damn mind. Episode 11, Carrot and Stick. Outside, Maggie runs into Linda, who's packing some boxes into her car. Turns out her and Bob are moving to Lakeview after all. Maggie asks her how they got in, and Linda replies that she must just be lucky. Maggie doesn't let her off easy though, and asks if it had anything to do with Charlie. After a tense pause, Linda says she doesn't know anyone by that name. Maggie just pretends she misspoke and heads over to the park where she watches the empty playground once again, repeating the word forget. Officer Tom shows up and asks her how she's doing today, like nothing happened. Maggie is visibly trying to hold in her anger. After a few seconds of silence, Tom reminds her that an officer just asked her a question. Her eyes glow red and she finally responds saying, I'm doing wonderful, Tom, how about you? He sits down next to her and they have a pleasant and superficial conversation. Finally, he straight up asks her if she's heard from Charlie, and we see her dig her nails into the park bench. She tells him she has no idea who he's talking about, and Tom laughs it off like it was a mistake. He says, I'll be seeing ya, and walks away. Yep, it looks like he's got his eye on Maggie now. Episode 12, Crocodile Teeth. Back at home, Maggie stares into her mirror and sees Charlie, who tells her to forget all of it. She spots the red toothbrush again and then sees Sam in the mirror saying, we need to forget. She screams that she's trying, and when she looks at the toothbrush holder, it's now full of only the red brush. She looks over and sees Charlie on the bathroom floor ripping his own eyes out, saying, why, Maggie, why? This vision spirals out of control as a giant Officer Tom grabs her like a doll, but she snaps back into reality by smashing the mirror and cutting up her hand pretty bad in the process. In tears, she grabs a shard of glass and holds it to her own neck. It seems like maybe she's giving up on life. Then, for a brief moment, she sees what looks like a child brushing their teeth in the shattered glass, although we can't see their head. The kid, a little girl I think, is singing a cute song about brushing her crocodile teeth, and then presumably Maggie enters the bathroom and has a funny conversation with her. It's a funny family moment that confirms something you probably guessed by now. Sam and Maggie had a child, and likely many of the other adults around, but there have been no children in sight. When Sam told Maggie they have to keep going for her, they were likely talking about their daughter. Maggie looks over and sees Charlie once more, although he has no facial features, only the blank cat mask. It's clear he's in her head. Maggie tells him she doesn't want to forget anymore, and Charlie tells her it's time then, isn't it? She asks time for what, but he implies she already knows. He leads her outside and over to his house, which is covered in police tape. Inside, he tells her that once she goes down into the basement, there's no going back. Episode 13, Science 101. Maggie asks Charlie what's down there, and he tells her that she already suspects it, but that this will only confirm her beliefs. So she enters the dark basement and flips on the light. We finally get a look at whatever it was that Charlie was hiding down here. It turns out to be nothing. At least it looks that way. It's a pretty normal basement with a washer and dryer as well as storage shelves. After looking around, Maggie finds a box labeled trains and takes a look inside, but still doesn't find anything unusual. She looks around the basement once more and finally spots something behind the dryer, a small piece of foil left on the wall. Maggie says that this can't be all that's down here. Then she finds a box for the Flying Scotsman, the train Charlie wanted to show her. Inside, there's a drawing by a child named Charlotte that shows the girl and her father father and what appears to be her mother up in heaven. This must be the girl Charlie mentioned and likely his daughter. It also implies that his wife died at some point and that's why he lives alone. She also finds a textbook labeled Science 101 with a dog-eared page. The page is about a Faraday cage, an enclosure used to block electromagnetic fields from entering and affecting the contents. It goes on to explain that you can make a Faraday cage simply using aluminum foil. Across the page, in bold red letters, Charlie has written the words, "It works." Episode 14, Supply Chain. Later, Maggie is shopping at the store looking for some foil. It seems that the shelf it should be on is completely empty. She asks an employee if they have any more in the back, and the guy acts really weird about it, flatly telling her that they don't, and he refuses to even look. She walks back to her car and is greeted by a stranger in the parking lot who introduces herself as Judy. She notices Maggie was looking for foil and assumes it was for a turkey. Maggie goes along with this, and it becomes clear that Judy knows this isn't for a turkey, and using cryptic language, she inquires how much foil Maggie really needs and eventually tells her she can have some of hers. Judy opens her trunk to reveal a ton of aluminum foil. She says Maggie can have all of it for free and maybe down the line she could do Judy a favor. They transfer the foil to Maggie's car and Judy tells her to be careful roasting her turkey. It needs to be completely sealed and may need doubling up. She also tells her that cooking the bird is only part of the job. You have to be prepared to carve it up. Episode 15, Try It at Home. Maggie arrives home with all the foil and Sam asks her why she needs so much. She tells him it's a housewife secret. She asks him to help her bring it into the basement and he seems a little suspicious but goes along with it anyway. Next door, Linda is watching through the window and tells her husband that it seems Maggie has picked up a new hobby, model trains, and says she's going to make a call. Bob asks if she's sure since they're already going to Lakeview after all, but Linda insists. 1 week later, Sam is putting up a painting with a hammer and nails. He spots Maggie coming out of the basement and questions why she spent so much time down there lately. She says that she's doing laundry, just part of her wifely duties. He attempts to go down into the basement to look for his lucky socks and she quickly stops him. This leads to a heated back and forth until suddenly the doorbell rings. Sam answers it and finds none other than Officer Tom at his door. Episode 16, Animals Are Free. You know this chapter is going to get wild because there's a warning at the top for disturbing content and imagery. Tom asks to come inside and Sam kindly obliges. Maggie and Tom exchange cold pleasantries, then he asks if he can check the basement. Sam says of course and offers him the grand tour, if it's okay with Maggie. She says of course, go right ahead, so Sam and Tom open the basement door. They pass by the hammer and nails that are still sitting nearby and Sam asks if there's any particular reason he needs to take a look down here. Tom says he's just curious and as they make their way down the stairs we can see Maggie enter the doorway behind them. Even more unsettling, we see that the hammer is missing. Sam fumbles for the light switch and finally turns it on, revealing that the basement has been covered top to bottom in foil, making it a large Faraday cage. This explains what Maggie was doing down here all week. Sam is confused, legitimately not knowing what's going on. Up the stairs, the basement door slams shut and Maggie stands at the top looking down at them and clutching the hammer. Tom tells her she needs to think very carefully, but before he can even finish the sentence, Maggie slams the hammer into the side of his head. Truly one of the most shocking moments in this entire comic. Blood, along with a strange green liquid, cover the hammer and splatter the walls as it sprays out of the side of Tom's head. His body lay in shock on the floor, mumbling when Maggie addresses him. She says, "I want you to know, Tom, even through that mask I saw it on your face. We're all in the same boat here, but that doesn't mean we have to enjoy it like you do." Tom stutters that they really are the same. He says their names are Peter and Davy, likely the names of his own children. Maggie raises the hammer coldly and says their names were Charlotte and Charlie. Tom tries to beg her to stop, saying they can go back, but she says, "I'm sorry, Tom, there is no going back." The following pages are in red as Maggie brutally smashes Tom's head in with the hammer over and over. Sam stands in horror as she commits the act, blood splashing onto his face. Maggie kneels over Tom's body with green goo and blood covering most of her face and simply says to her husband, "We need to talk." On the ground, we see Tom's mutilated head, his brains exposed. My God, what a chapter. Episode 17, Since Last Accident. Sam is in a complete daze, seeing his wife clean the blood off of herself in a blur. She reaches into Tom's pocket and pulls out his phone. It's locked by fingerprint, but no problem. She pulls Tom's lifeless thumb onto the screen to unlock it. Sam is still watching in shock while Maggie opens an app and shows a map of the neighborhood and little colored cat heads tracking everyone's whereabouts. She clicks on on Sam's icon and gets a detailed readout on him. At the bottom it says last ping 3 minutes ago, next ping 7 minutes. Seeing this puts Maggie in a panic. She looks up at Sam and tells him that it's okay to talk, that's what the foil's for. He stays silent and she tries to help clean him off until he finally tells her not to touch him and smacks her hand away. He asks her if she has any idea what she's done, and that now they've lost everything. She tries to assure him that it's okay. She'll explain everything, but first she needs his help. They're being tracked, and in 6 minutes the GPS will update, and if they're still down here when it does, they'll know something's wrong. Charlie is barely listening and still in a full-blown panic, calling her crazy. She asks him if he's still in there, if he still loves her. After a long pause, he says, of course he does. Then she recounts when Sam proposed to her, how he had the whole thing planned outside and told her he couldn't tell her why, and it sounds like the worst idea in the world, but you have to take my hand and come outside. You just have to trust me. Maggie is now asking him the same thing, to trust her. In a couple of minutes, the GPS will update and they'll see Tom is missing. But if he can help her stop that, they may find a way forward, and maybe they can save her. Sam finally agrees to trust her, and they realize their first order of business is to move Tom's body. Episode 18, Funny How. Sam and Maggie move Tom's body upstairs, and Maggie reminds him not to speak until they get back into the basement. Getting a better look at Tom's busted up body in the light, Sam can't help but throw up. The GPS pings and they head back downstairs. Once in the basement, Maggie tells him it's okay to speak. You could even curse if you want, although she finds it really fudging difficult to do so. She chuckles, and this just sets Sam off. He talks about how hard he's worked to keep this all together and how she's ruined any chance they had of getting her back. Maggie doesn't believe there's really a chance that would ever happen, even if they played along with this sick game. Sam asks her what the point of all of this was, and Maggie says that whoever's running this whole thing can't be trusted, and after she found out about the foil, they could talk and come up with a plan, or at the very least, she could hear his real voice. She's lost track of the last time they've had a real conversation, but thinks it must have been 3 or 4 years ago. Maggie sets a timer for the next ping, and Sam collapses to the ground in exhaustion, saying he just wants all of this to be over and that he misses her so much. Maggie sits down to him for a few moments, and finally Sam breaks the silence, saying it's been 3 years, 1 month, and 15 days since they last truly spoke. I guess he'd been counting. He also tells her he's all ears. What's the plan? Maggie says he's not gonna like it, but to hear her out. We then cut to a knock on the door. The neighbor Bob opens it up to find what appears to be Officer Tom standing at his door. Episode 19, Protect and Serve. So I'll just tell you right now, this episode will seem very confusing, but just hold on till the following chapter because it ends up being one of my favorites. So it seems Maggie's plan involved Sam impersonating Officer Tom. He asks to come in and have a look around, and Bob seems suspicious but lets him in. He offers him a glass of water since it seems like the officer has a frog in his throat, likely due to Sam changing his voice. He says he needs to look down and back. Bob is still a little confused, as are we, but assumes he means the basement and kitchen. Sam asks if he can have any whiskey, and Bob politely offers him wine instead. As he prepares some, Sam inspects the kitchen sink, and we hear a small clicking noise. When Bob comes back with the wine, Sam just ignores it and heads towards the basement. Bob offers to give him a tour, but Sam shouts, "No, stay back, only me." He goes downstairs, slamming the door behind him, and makes quite a ruckus downstairs before coming back up. Then he just walks out the back door, not saying a word to Bob. Before Bob can think about what the hell just happened, there's a knock at the front door. It's Maggie, and she's in a tizzy. She tells him that Winston has gone missing and asks if he's seen him. Bob assures her it's probably fine and offers to go help her look. Just then, a loud thud sounds nearby. Bob thinks maybe it was Winston, and Maggie says she'll go look, now refusing Bob's help. Bob can tell something is up, and when he gets back inside, calls the authorities. He starts to report what happened when interrupted by whoever's on the line. He simply says, "Oh, I see," as his eye glows red and he hangs up the phone. Like I said, this is a very confusing chapter, but it pays off in the next segment. Episode 20, Working the Angles. Across the street, Maggie rushes into the basement where she finds Sam. He apologizes for making the loud noise when he jumped the fence. Either way, it seems like they pulled it off. It then cuts back to before the last episode. Maggie is convincing Sam to go through with her plan, saying that Bob and Linda were never really their friends and that they tried to do the same to them. She runs through the plan one more time, and it sheds light on what was going on in episode 19. Linda's out shopping, so Bob will greet Sam at the door and will have to let him in even if he's suspicious. Then Sam will unlock the kitchen window when Bob's not looking, which explains the clicking noise. Next, they have the GPS from Tom's head and his phone. It's actually some interesting lore here showing how they're tracked, implants. Sam gets into Bob's basement and smashes Tom's phone and then hides the tracker and hammer somewhere. Then he leaves through the back door to avoid the street cameras. Bob will be watching, but Maggie will distract him, giving Sam a moment to hop the fence and get back home. Using Tom's mustache and uniform works well enough, but what about Sam's voice? Even if he doesn't fool Bob, he needs to at least fool the microphones. Maggie shows Sam what she found on Tom's phone, a video of Tom presumably playing with his two kids, something Maggie implies even he shouldn't have kept. In the recording, Tom is playing cops and robbers with his boys. Maggie can cut the video up into clips and cue them up to play when needed. This explains why Sam was barely speaking to Bob, and when he did, he used slightly bizarre language. Finally, Maggie used Tom's phone to reply to his supervisor. She sends a text about how the reports from 395, Bob and Linda's house, were false again, and to give them a red eye ban if they call again because of the bad intel. Surprisingly, they go along with it, and this explains why Bob was cut off when calling to report Maggie again. It also opens up some interesting questions about the whole red eye thing. It's still unclear to me what is happening when one of those eyes goes red, but we'll learn more about that later. Back in the present, Sam asks Maggie if she's okay, and she breaks down about what they've done, calling herself a monster. Sam takes her hands and says that she's not a monster, she's a mom. Episode 21, One More Time. Sam manages to calm his wife down and they decide they should probably go back upstairs. Maggie says that if things go wrong, and let's face it, they probably will, this may be the last time they have together. After a moment, Sam simply asks her, big or little? She replies little, and we see what they were talking about. They just wanted to cuddle one last time, Maggie being the little spoon. Oh, come on, that's just cute. Next door, Bob explains what happened to Linda, and their eyes glow red. Linda asks Bob to help her find some tape to pack for Lakeview, and they go into the closet. Turns out that their closet is actually a Faraday cage lined with aluminum foil. Here, Bob can tell her all the details of what happened without the facade. He says that it may sound crazy, but he thinks maybe the officer was actually Sam dressed up. He thinks maybe Sam and Maggie murdered Officer Tom. Episode 22, Every Unhappy Family. After Bob pitches this theory, Linda just looks at him dumbfounded and then calls him an idiot. She mocks his idea and makes him feel stupid for coming up with it, which is hilarious because he's so dead on. Linda calls Sam and Maggie the two most spineless dipshits around. Of course they'd never have the balls to kill a cop. By the way, this is the first curse word in the series, and it actually probably indicates that Linda and Bob have had the Faraday closet for a while to be comfortable cursing like that. Anyway, Linda thinks they should leave early in the morning to Lakeview before anything goes down. Bob suggests leaving tonight, and Linda viciously mocks him again, since this would make them look guilty. He apologizes, and she says, "It's okay, hun. This stuff just isn't in your nature." This scene really makes you hate Linda if you didn't already. The next morning, Sam brings Maggie a cup of coffee, although he refers to it as caffeine, saying he misses real beans. They remember a cute instance when their daughter brought Maggie a cup of mud and said it was coffee, which she accidentally drank. But reality sinks back in, and Sam says that maybe they'll actually pull this off. He asks Maggie why she didn't tell him about the foil to begin with, and she admits she wasn't sure if she could trust him after all these years. He apologizes for letting himself get comfortable with the hellish facade they're forced to put on, and for treating Maggie poorly in the process. They both say "I love you" and then move on to the next order of business, Tom's body, which has been wrapped and taped up. Episode 23, One Body Problem. Late into the night, a woman named Laura makes a call to a police officer named Greg, asking if he's heard from Tom. It seems Laura is Tom's wife, and he hasn't come home yet. Greg assures her that he'll see what's going on with Tom and that he's probably fine. Unaware, of course, that Tom is dead in a basement with his head bashed in. When the time is right, Sam and Maggie carry Tom's body over the fence into Bob and Linda's yard. With the kitchen window unlocked, thanks to Sam, they can sneak inside with the body. They head for the basement where they unwrap Tom's body, and we get another disgusting look at Tom's exposed brains and whatever that green goo is. Sam grabs the broken phone, tracker, and hammer and lays them by the body. Then the couple begin to sneak back out of the neighbor's house. Once they get upstairs, however, the hall light comes on, and it seems Linda Linda is up and walking about. Episode 24, Desperate Times. Linda looks into the kitchen and spots the open window. Meanwhile, Maggie runs back downstairs for some reason. After a few moments, there's a jarring sound as the living room window is smashed. Linda runs over to inspect it, and this gives Sam and Maggie the chance to escape out of the kitchen window. Linda barely gets to the window when she hears even more noise outside, the couple climbing over the fence and being loud about it. But they manage to make it inside before Linda gets a look at them. Inside, Sam and Maggie are completely out of breath, but they manage to move the body and get back right before the 10-minute GPS reset, hopefully framing their neighbors for the murder. Sam asks Maggie what she threw out the window, and it turns out it was the hammer, which is why she ran back downstairs. Linda finds it in the yard and also happens to notice her neighbor's lights on. Sam freaks out over the hammer since it was covered in blood and goo and might lead to Linda looking into the basement. But Maggie reminds him it doesn't really matter at this point. They can't report it, so they're out of options. Bob and Linda inspect the hammer inside and decide it must definitely have something to do with Sam and Maggie, and decide to at least try to report them. But before they get very far, police lights flash through the windows. Soon there's a knock at the door and Linda opens it up. Outside, Officer Greg and another cop politely ask if she's seen their good friend Tom lately. Episode 25. Sam and Maggie see the cops at their neighbor's door and realize that this is where the rubber hits the road. They tell each other I love you and prepare to face the music. Shortly after, the second cop, Pete, knocks on their door and asks to come inside. Sam and Maggie put on a polite front. Turns out that Maggie actually called the police saying that she was woken up by a smashing sound next door and that there was a commotion. Officer Pete asks who was involved and Maggie playfully says it was probably just a lover's spat. We've all been there. Pete thanks them for bringing it to their attention but follows by asking to see their basement. Sam shows him downstairs and we can see Maggie standing in the doorway. Very reminiscent of when Tom walked down not so long ago. Before we see what happens, it jumps back to Officer Greg, who's asking Linda a few questions. Linda says she never met an Officer Tom when Bob barges in front of her and explains everything, showing him the hammer in a panic. He can't contain himself and eventually straight up tells Greg that he thinks the neighbors murdered his colleague Tom. The cop seems puzzled and Bob just starts rambling on about how he thinks it was Sam dressed as Tom who came over and that it's all a conspiracy. The officer says it's an interesting story, especially the fact that 1, Linda just said she never met Tom, and 2, he never mentioned anything about murder, making Bob seem guilty as hell. Greg then asks to see their basement. Speaking of which, back at Sam and Maggie's, the officer looks over their basement and doesn't find a thing. All of the aluminum foil has been removed. However, he has Sam and Maggie come with him to help straighten this whole thing out. Next door, Greg has just stumbled upon Tom's corpse in the basement and is disgusted at the sight of it. Bob and Linda are in a full freakout, saying over and over that it wasn't them. Poor bastards. Greg ignores them and says that they are found guilty of murder and that effective immediately, they are designated red status. Episode 26, No Going Back. Officer Pete shows up with Sam and Maggie and Greg tells him to stay up there. He's not going to want to see Tom like this. Linda says that Sam and Maggie were behind it, and Maggie plays dumb, acting like she doesn't know what's wrong. Greg tells Pete what's happened and wonders what Tom found that would make Bob and Linda do this. Bob once again starts rambling about his conspiracy that Sam dressed as Tom and came over here, but Sam and Maggie ask why would he tell such awful lies. On top of that, the story sounds completely bogus. Suddenly, Linda appears from the kitchen holding a knife. Bob and the police try to calm her down and talk to her, but she realizes now that they're red status that there's no talking it through. She runs up to stab Maggie, but right before she can, Officer Pete hits her with a taser, dropping her to the ground. On her knees, she tells the other couple she hopes they're proud of themselves. They could have let them go. Officer Greg then officially changes them to red on his phone, causing their eyes to glow. In their eyes, we see a vision, all in red and white. There are 2 children standing at the top of a tall building calling for them. The oldest child says, "We don't know if you can hear us, but just know it's okay. You didn't do anything wrong." We then see the children start to step off the building. They say that they are actually lucky and that this is the most important part. We can see their white silhouettes falling rapidly from the extremely tall building. The kid continues saying, "We love you, Dad. You're our hero. Mom, I'm scared, but I'll be brave for him. Love you, Mom." Then 2 loud thuds. It zooms back out from Linda's eye as she screams in pure terror. As Bob and Linda stay on the ground mentally broken, Officer Greg says, "Okay, folks, now you can leave." Man, this was one insane episode. It did show a little more into what's happening when someone is turned red status. It seems their children, wherever they are being kept, are killed and they're forced to watch. Maybe when their eyes glow at other times, it's showing them similar imagery of their children, which is used as a tool to keep everyone in line. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm intrigued to find out more. Episode 27, Heat Death. The cops bring Sam and Maggie outside, but right before they do, Linda and Maggie exchange a cold glance. Greg tells them it was pretty brutal stuff in there and he's sorry they had to see it. Maggie asks what'll happen to Bob and Linda, and the officer just responds, what will happen to who? Just like with Charlie, it seems the protocol is to forget that red status people ever existed. It's strange to me that they don't appear to kill them though, they basically just break their will to continue, and I'm assuming force them out into the street or something, which might explain the guy that ate Winston. So the question then is, what happened to Charlie? Anyway, Greg tells the couple how lucky they are. Now that Bob and Linda are out of the picture, a spot opened up at Lakeview and he's taking them there tonight. They get their bags packed and they take Tom's car since, well, he won't be needing it. Sam and Maggie sit quietly in the back of the car until Greg asks them if they know what's going to happen here. They look puzzled and he says soon they can see for themselves. They're just about to pass another neighborhood in a minute. The one before theirs on the schedule, whatever that means. Greg pulls down the visor and notices a picture Tom had of him and his wife. Looking at the picture, it's clear that Sam and Maggie feel uneasy. Greg tells them to look up ahead on their left and an orange glow begins to cover the car. Outside, we see several houses being burned to the ground. We get a top-down zoom out of the neighborhood and see that it's actually several blocks in flames. Even more zoom out shows that thousands upon thousands of houses have already been burned down. What the actual hell is happening? Episode 28, Pleasure to Burn. This episode starts elsewhere at a box factory. Box Factory 118192 to be exact. A woman approaches it, and I think it may be Judy, the lady who helped Maggie get all that aluminum foil. I'm not 100% sure, but she does look the same. For instance, they both have cat heads. I'm just kidding, but the outfit is the same. Inside, boxes are being shot out into a huge pile, and nearby is a table with some left behind food scraps. In the center of the building is a large incinerator and a conveyor belt. At the end, a figure stands on the conveyor, being slowly pulled into the flames. Judy tries to talk the man down, telling him that they would want him to fight, probably referencing his children. She asks how he's gonna face them if he goes out like a coward. The man says, I was throwing all that stuff in the river when I got back to the car and the book was on the seat. I really don't know what this guy's talking about, but I'm sure we'll find out soon. Judy starts the conveyor belt again and then climbs on it. She tells him to take the road north and when he hits the woods to look for a rusty ice cream truck. As she almost goes into the incinerator, she says, there's no point saying sorry, just tell them I went down for the cause. But at the last second, the man grabs her and pulls them both off. On his knees, he says, okay, I'll help. Judy thanks him and says, welcome to the rebellion, Charlie. That's right, the man is Charlie. His face is still torn up where he clawed at it, and even weirder, you can see his exposed brains through the mask, which really gives me some questions about the anatomy here. I mean, what the hell is happening in those cat heads? This whole segment is pretty cryptic, but I think it'll make more sense down the line. The part about the book is confusing, but I do wonder if he's talking about the Science 101 book that he left for Maggie to find. Maybe he was forced to throw his wife and daughter's things into the river and the book was left behind by accident, leading him to learning about the Faraday cage. Anyway, let's get back to Sam and Maggie in the final episode of season 1. Episode 29, All Good Things. This episode starts off kind of funny. Because of the nature of webtoons, you can basically have endless panels that keep scrolling down, which leads to some interesting formatting that you couldn't normally get away with. For instance, when Bob and Linda go red, that whole sequence was one long panel. Well, the author takes advantage of this to basically do a movie-like title scroll on this final episode. Reminds me of the opening of The Shining, where we see the car driving down that winding road. But here, it just keeps going to the point of being kind of comical. Finally, Officer Greg says you folks are in for a real treat, and that Lakeview is something else. As he speaks, we see a squirrel on the side of the road nibbling on something, and on a closer look, it appears to be a human finger. Pretty disturbing stuff. The town comes into view, and as promised, it's beautiful. It's right in the middle of nature, surrounded by a massive lake. Greg parks in a communal parking lot just outside of town, saying that they don't do cars here. As he gets out of the car, he puts on a little badge with a smiley face. A man approaches them named Julian. He has a pink cat head with a butterfly on it. This is the first time time we've seen a design on any of them. Anyway, he asks how Greg is holding up after the Tom situation. I might note that Julian has a badge as well that has 2 smiley faces on it. Interesting. Julian says everyone's shook up about Tom, but we're all born of stars and we all return one day. So you kind of get Julian's vibe just with that. He greets Sam and Maggie with optimism and compliments Maggie's outfit. Just then the mayor shows up. Her cat mask has a heart around one eye, making her instantly recognizable from the photo in Tom's car. Yep, the mayor of Lakeview is Tom's wife. She comes in with the typical fake happiness we've gotten used to. Greg tries to pull her aside, presumably to talk about her dead husband, but she refuses, saying there's no time. After all, she needs to greet the fresh new faces of Lakeview. Sam says he's sorry for her loss, but she shrugs it off, saying that's enough of that sorry business. It's too nice a day. Damn, talk about moving on. Your husband's brains are leaking onto a basement floor, lady. She then adds, besides, it's not like you murdered my husband, right? I gotta say, that line is just straight up scary given the circumstances. Maggie says sorry all the same, and the mayor snaps a little bit, saying that's enough. She calms herself down a little and says there's a bright day ahead of them. The sun is shining, the birds are singing, and today, like every day, everything is fine. Here's where I would typically do a little section talking about theories and what's going on, but as I said, this is only season 1, so many of the questions we have will be answered in the following seasons. We can, however, recap what we know for sure from part 1. The cat masks seem to be forced on surgically. No one even tries to remove them, even people who are red status, and judging by Tom and Charlie's exposed brains, it seems like the full anatomical structure is changed. Now we know that the red eyes are actually a way to control the citizens by showing them glimpses of their captured children, and when they're found guilty of a crime, the kids are killed off. It's unclear exactly how long this dystopia has been in place, but the conversation between Sam and Maggie implies that it started 3 or 4 years ago. There's still so many big questions, mainly who's in charge of this strange Orwellian society and what's their end goal. All I know is I'm excited to find out. As I said, if you guys like this video and want to see more of Everything is Fine, let me know in the comments. Shout out to Kill Me Katie as always for the intro and outro music, which is likely playing right now. And thanks to everyone who checked out the Limerence Kickstarter and trailer. If you missed me talking about it, it's a very cool semi-animated album film that these guys are making, and I really want to see it complete, so go check out the trailer, I'll link it below. If you want to see your art at the end of my videos, email me with a social media handle or name at the address below. Finally, big thank you to my patrons for supporting the channel. If you want your name displayed at the end of every video like these fine people, consider joining my Patreon. But I appreciate you guys watching at all. This is Grief speaking. Goodbye, friends.
From thinking about all that she said, and I'll just look past that. You busted your kneecaps. Got to be friendly, no, just got to hold back. And I felt the notion to kill your delusion.
Today's video is sponsored by War Thunder. Thanks to them for supporting the channel. Hello friends, this is Grief speaking. So last week we dove into the world of Something is Killing the Children. I know I left you guys on a bit of a cliffhanger, but we're gonna wrap up the Archer's Peak arc today. In this second half, we'll get more action, more dead children, and also a better understanding of the House of Slaughter and how they operate. The world building is fascinating in this series. It kind of reminds me of John Wick for some reason, how there's this underground organization hiding in plain sight. Before we dive in, I want to mention that I recently launched channel memberships. So far, we've done 2 Guillermo del Toro films in the movie club, Frankenstein and Pan's Labyrinth, so that's been a lot of fun. Also, for Stage 2 members, there are stickers and holiday cards with handwritten notes shipping out soon, so sign up to get them before Christmas. Anyway, we have a lot to get through, so let's get into the video. This is Something is Killing the Children Explained, Part 2. So let's get into it with issue number 9. This one starts off with 2 teenage boys looking for their younger brother after they intentionally ditched him in the woods. One of the brothers looks down and sees what looks like blood on the ground when suddenly Tommy Mahoney jumps out in front of them and yells at them to run. Before they even have a chance to process what's happening, one brother is suddenly stabbed through the chest by one of the 5 monsters which have now surrounded them. The remaining kid looks at his dead brother in horror with tears filling his eyes, and Tommy Tommy just says he's so sorry, feeling like he's responsible for leading the monsters here. Back at the hospital, Erica shows up in James' room. He seems pretty upset with her, saying he thinks when this is all over, she's just gonna leave and he'll never see her again. She admits that this is exactly what'll happen. James adds that she's also probably not here to check on him, but instead because she needs something horrible from him. She bluntly tells him that she needs him to act as bait to lure monsters into a trap so she can kill them. Yeah, so it's actually worse than James thought, and at this point he can't help but laugh. He can't maintain his laughter for long though because of how much it hurts with his gunshot wound. James admits that when Erica showed up, he thought it was going to be like some kind of superhero movie where he tagged along on an adventure to get revenge on the monster that killed his friends and that nobody else would die. Now he thinks Erica is just as scared as everyone else and has no idea what she's doing. She says she kind of knows what she's doing, which is actually worse because she knows how bad it could all get. James asks why she's even here at all, and she says because once upon a time there was a little girl in a small town just like this, and she watched something nobody else could see rip open her best friend and eat them. Here we actually get a flashback to Erica as a little girl clutching her stuffed octopus. She was attacked by a monster and it became so powerful that it managed to kill her parents, but she felt she had to do something. Somehow, little Erica hurt the monster with nothing but a kitchen knife. Soon after, a woman in a bandana showed up and helped Erica capture the monster and cage it in her favorite stuffed animal. Then the woman offered to train her at the House of Slaughter to be a monster hunter in the Order of St. George. Erica thought she was going to be a part of something good, but she learned how many monsters there really are out there and how many children die every day. She soon realized that the House of Slaughter does more to keep those deaths quiet and covered up than to stop them from happening. She tells James that she's not going to take him under her wing and train him or anything because this life is horrible. But when they first met, he did ask if he could do something to help, and this is it. She's not a superhero, she's just a tired, sad lady who knows how to kill these things. Eric is interrupted when Tommy's friend Tam comes to the room out of breath and tells her about the phone call with Tommy, that those monsters are in the forest behind the school and may have found some more victims. Back at the school, the sheriff arrives to see how things are going with the parents. Tim talks about how horrible it is to watch them break down at the sight of their dead kids, and he pulls out a couple of beers, offering one to Joe. It's so funny how this guy just keeps pulling out beers. Suddenly, a cop comes in and warns them that they're screaming coming from the woods. We check back in with Tommy and the young teen still surrounded by the monsters. The kid's in tears, screaming when one of the creatures moves in on them. Tommy picks up a rock and smashes it in the face. The kid takes the opportunity to run despite Tommy's warnings, and sure enough, he's impaled by a beast as well. Tommy throws a rock at the monster and it lets go of the boy's lifeless body. Tommy just holds it, sobbing. He tells the monsters to kill him too. At this point, he can't take it anymore, watching all of these innocent people die and feeling helpless to stop it. However, the monsters retreat and a voice speaks out behind him. Sheriff Joe has arrived and his gun is drawn and pointed at Tommy. Honestly, he looks pretty guilty, kneeling on the ground beside two bloody corpses. Before we go any further, I want to thank today's sponsor, War Thunder, the most comprehensive and detailed vehicle combat game out there. War Thunder is completely free to play, and you can hop into it on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and mobile. One of the things that makes War Thunder so addictive is just how massive it is. You can take control of over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships from more than 10 major nations. Everything from 1920s biplanes and early armored cars, all the way to modern jets and main battle tanks. What I like about War Thunder is the amount of detail. The sound design, the damage modeling, and the feeling of chaos when a battle gets intense is awesome. And despite how detailed it is, it's easy to pick up and play, so anyone can jump in. And if you use my links in the description or pinned comment to sign up, whether you're brand new or you haven't played in the last 6 months on PC or consoles, War Thunder will give you a massive bonus pack. The bonus includes the exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle of Valor, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of premium account. This is only available for a limited time, so don't wait on it. If you want to jump into huge PvP battles with millions of players and try out some incredibly detailed war machines, use my link, sign up for free, and claim your bonus pack. It's a great way to support the channel and have fun at the same time. Thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Now back to the story. Issue number 10. Back at the school, Principal Colin asks for the family of Sophie Mahoney to step forward. Tommy's mother comes forward and is pretty harsh towards Collins. I guess if your kid was killed, you'd be pretty jaded too. In the woods, the sheriff tells his deputies to keep the whole situation quiet. They don't need another panic this close to the families. Tommy chimes in saying he didn't do this and that the real killers are out there and will be back here any moment. Joe freaks out on him, telling him to shut the hell up, and the deputies awkwardly head out. Shortly after, Aaron arrives and Joe just says, "Oh God," god, there's more of you? He soon realizes this is the man he spoke to on the phone. Aaron tells him that they'll need his authorities to keep the adults down there from panicking. Meanwhile, he'll watch Tommy to make sure he doesn't get into any trouble. Well, we all know what that means. The sheriff goes along with this, saying he needs to go tell a mother and father that they just lost their other kids as well. Tommy knows Aaron must be from the same group as Erica and tells him that she did something to him so he can see the monsters now. Aaron says he's well aware of what she did and pulls out a syringe with a red liquid, then casually says, "We cannot allow you to live." Meanwhile, Tam has given Erica and James a ride to the school, but when they arrive, a cop tells them they'll need to turn around and that they'll resume things tomorrow. Erica and James get out anyway and approach the gym where many of the parents are enraged at being turned away from seeing their children's bodies. They run into the sheriff, who immediately asks why James isn't in the hospital. Erica just ignores him and says he needs to tell her exactly what the hell happened here. He just lays it all out about finding the 3 bodies in the woods and how her friend is watching Tommy right now. Erica looks pretty scared, realizing how close the monsters are, especially since there are a lot of children here with their parents. She tells Joe to get the parents, especially with children, as far away from here as possible, and to take James as deep into the school as they can manage. James tries to protest, but Erica tells him very seriously that this situation is way worse than anyone realizes, and she doesn't want him getting hurt. So Joe has Tim take James into the school while he leads Erica back to Tommy. At the same time, we see an exchange with Tommy's mom and a cop where she's refusing to leave the premises until she sees her daughter. In the woods, Aaron has injected the syringe into Tommy, though it doesn't look like it's going to kill him, but rather drug him to make his death painless. I guess that shows some empathy. Aaron pulls out a knife and says that it is crucial that their secrets don't get into the wrong hands. Before he can slit Tommy's throat, however, Erica jumps in to stop him and knocks him to the ground. She's now realizing that Aaron is here to help cover up these incidents, not help stop them, and that Tommy is just another loose end. Aaron says she's the one who opened this door, not him, and that she knows the rules. Tommy struggles to stand up, and Erica tells the sheriff that he's drugged and will be useless for a few hours. She then slams Aaron up against a tree and tells him that she's going to need his help. He says she's just delaying the inevitable and points out that the more she reveals in front of the sheriff, the more he becomes a target as well. She interrupts him, saying that there are 5 Oscura types and 3 dead bodies, meaning that isn't enough sustenance for a full brood. They'll be in a blood frenzy and they're starving. Aaron sees how dangerous this is and decides to help her after all. She says that this is what none of them understand at the House of Slaughter. While they worry about all the rules, real people are getting hurt. We cut back to the school where a young girl flies her toy airplane through the parking lot. She stops dead in her tracks, however, when she sees a massive monster creep out from the woods. It seems after feeding, the babies have grown in size by quite a bit. Nearby, Sheriff Joe is walking Tommy into the school parking lot, and Tommy sees the monster. He desperately tries to tell Joe to get the little girl, but can hardly speak. Finally, he rushes forward to try and save her himself, but still being drugged, he falls face first onto the ground. Meanwhile, the little girl cries out as she's pulled into the air. To the adults who can't see the monster, she seems to just be floating, and finally, the creature rips her in half. Jesus, this comic is so unforgiving. The parents are in shock, including Tommy's mom, who walks over to try and help the girl, not seeing the beast standing right in front of her. Tommy again runs forward, attempting to save his mom. Meanwhile, James urges Tim to get everyone into the gymnasium, saying more kids will die if he doesn't. So Tim starts calling everyone inside. At the same time, Erica and Aaron show up and believe that because of the massive amount of fear, the monsters will soon be able to kill everyone, not just the kids. Aaron tells Erica to get James and Bien and get as far away as possible to lead the monsters into a trap. On the other hand, he intends to stay here and fight. Erica says he can't fight for shit, but he argues that he passed all the same field tests as her. He tells her he's not an evil man. He doesn't like how the order conducts its business. He just always tried to tip things in the right balance. That's why he's always had her back ever since they lost Jessica. Well, I don't know who Jessica is, but Aaron just got a lot more respectable and he pulls out his knives ready to fight. Erica helps move the others into the gym, and Tommy asks if Aaron is really going to fight them alone, but she seems to imply that Aaron isn't intending on actually winning. He charges in, stabbing one of the creatures in the face, but immediately his arm is cut off. He curses and hoped it wouldn't end this soon. In the final panel of the issue, we see the monsters tearing Aaron to pieces and eating him. Whoa. Issue 11 kicks off with a flashback of James shortly after watching all of his friends die. As he watches his last friend get ripped apart and eaten, his father comes running into the woods, clearly unaware of the giant monster right next to him. He holds his son and asks what happened here, and as the creature creeps back into the forest, James says that he did it. realizing that no one would believe the truth. In the present, the monsters finish feasting on Aaron and the fresh corpse of the little girl. In the gym, the survivors sit silently as they listen to the horrible noises outside. Erica comes in and grabs James, telling the sheriff to keep everyone inside until Tommy tells them it's safe. The sheriff is annoyed and confused. Why are they leaving their lives in the hand of Tommy, who's still drugged? He doesn't realize that Tommy's the only poor bastard that can see what's killing them. Erica ignores him and instructs Tommy to check outside every 5 minutes to see if the monsters are still there. Sheriff Joe asks what he's supposed to tell all these people, and Erica says that they just saw a little girl get ripped apart in midair. Tell them that they'll be next if they don't listen. Then her and James head to the other side of the building to sneak out of a window. At the House of Slaughter, we see the woman in the white bandana that we saw before. Her name is Cecilia, and she has a meeting with the old dragon, aka the man with the metal dragon mask. He asks what's bothering her, and she reveals that Aaron Slaughter is dead. Apparently, a video of him being eaten alive by an unseen Oscura type was posted on social media, and shortly after, another video of a young girl being ripped in half appeared online as well. Cecilia says that their friends in Silicon Valley have helped contain the posts, but the old dragon says they need to do a full blackout in Archer's Peak. No internet and no cell connection. They also need to divert any highway traffic away from the town. He then tells her to take point and bring a full team in. I should point out that while they have this conversation, the old man seems to be chowing down on gummy worms, which was an interesting touch. On the old dragon's desk sits a white teddy bear missing an eye. It starts to giggle, and he tells Cecilia to ignore it. This little bear seems pretty psychotic. He then says he wants Erica Slaughter brought back alive, but Cecilia thinks she's become too big of a risk. The old dragon cuts Cecilia off and slams his fist on the desk, reminding her that he's the dragon around here, and that he wants to speak with Erica himself. Cecilia says it will be done. She walks out into the hall and looks at several doors. One is labeled Black Room and another White Room. She enters the White Room, where many more people wearing white bandanas are awaiting her orders. Pretty interesting. So it seems within the House of Slaughter there are different factions or teams or something. Back at the school, Erica helps James climb out of a window, and you can tell it's painful considering his wound. Nearby, one of the monsters is lurking, but it seems they manage to avoid it as they get into a jeep that Erica starts to hotwire. She says if they can find Bien, she can perform the ritual that will let her kill them. James pulls out his phone and sees that he has no service. Erica knows exactly what this means and says they need to move fast. At the same time, James looks up to find the monster right outside of his window, like it's Jurassic Park or something. Issue 12 opens with James running up to a house and banging on the door. His face is covered in blood and tears, and he's crying out for help. Finally, someone answers, and it's Tom, who, if you remember, took Bien to protect her from Aaron and Erica. He says he doesn't know how they found him, but Erica's not getting anywhere near this girl. James falls to his hands and knees and begs for Tom's help, saying that Erica is hurt and he thinks she's dying. So Tom finally gives in and decides to help, following James to the Jeep. Here they find Erica bleeding and slumped over the steering wheel. She just says, "Hey John." And I should point out what appears to be a mistake in this series. Tom is sometimes called John with no explanation. At first I thought maybe it was two different similar looking characters, but no, it's the same guy. I just decided to pick the name Tom because it reminded me of Officer Tom from Everything Is Fine. Anyway, Erica says when she told him not to hide somewhere stupid, she didn't just mean his parents' house, but he says he doesn't exactly have a lot of spare houses to hide in. He asks what happened, and we get a short flashback of Erica fighting the monster, but getting her arm bitten in the process. With her uninjured arm, she managed to kill the damn thing, so at least that's one down. Tom helps her inside, but he says he needs to know what happened. Erica says she'll explain it the best she can, but she needs to stitch herself up, and quick, because the Order of St. George is coming. It cuts to a black car stopping at a sign outside of Archer's Peak, and some of the white bandanas cover it up with an exit closed sign as they make their way into town. While Erica patches herself up with one hand, Tom kind of unloads on her about this whole messed up situation and how he doesn't understand what's going on. Erica tells him that he's just gonna have to accept that there are things happening here that'll just sound made up, so he's just going to have to listen to what she tells him. She then lays it out so bluntly that it's almost funny. Monsters are real, only children can see them, and she's part of an organization of monster hunters called the Order of St. George. James then adds that the monster that killed his friends had 5 babies, and they're going to eat everyone in the school if they don't lure them away. Can you imagine being in Tom's position and hearing all of this? Well, after everything that's happened, he just accepts it. Erica says that laying the trap isn't as simple as dangling a kid out in front of the monsters. She needs to tap back into the invocation that created the monster, and to do that, she's going to need Bien. At the school, Tommy's looking around outside, and at first doesn't see anything but some mutilated corpses. He can't tell whether there's 4 dead people or just a couple of people torn into pieces and tossed around. Just as he's about to give them the go-ahead to leave the gym, a monster comes around the corner and he runs back to the others. Right before he gets inside, he spots 4 white masks at the edge edge of the woods. Meanwhile, Erica approaches Bien, who says she doesn't want to talk to her because she wants to hurt the babies. She says they weren't hurting anybody, they were just eating what their mama brought them. Well, that's one way to look at it. Erica tells the girl that those babies have grown up now and they're killing children. She asks Bien the first time she heard about the monsters, before she even saw them. Bien explains that she thinks it was when she was at a sleepover at Carly Monit's house. James recognizes this name as one of his friends who died was Tyler Monitz. At this sleepover, everyone was telling scary stories when Tyler came in and scared all of the girls by telling a story about the monster in the ravine. The same story he heard from James. Bien and her friends were scared to go into the woods after that because of the monster, and shortly after, one of the girls at the sleepover went missing, Sarah Washington. James tries to interrupt the story to tell Erica something, but she says they need to let Bien finish. The girl says that the more kids that went missing, the more scared she got, until one day, the monster took her back to its cave where she pretended to be dead to survive. After she tells this story, James storms out of the room and Erica goes to speak with him. She finds him sobbing on the back porch. He didn't really think this was all his fault, but now he realizes it is. He was the one who told the scary story to begin with, which birthed the monster, feasting on all these kids' fears. Apparently, this is the reason the monster left him alive that night in the ravine. Erica starts to explain that there are a lot of reasons why a monster is created, and it's not all his fault. But she's interrupted by someone who says that a member of the House of Slaughter would never reveal such secrets, would they? It's Cecilia, and as soon as Erica sees her, she tells James to get Bien and run. However, out of the house comes Tom, being escorted by two more people in the white masks. In a jarring moment, Cecilia doesn't hesitate to pull out a knife and slash Tom's throat open. That is a hell of a way to end this issue. Issue 13. In the school parking lot, the white masks from the House of Slaughter find a creature still chewing on Aaron's corpse. They all attack it and kill it with precision. It's kind of interesting how all these white masked members have different melee weapons, like a katana, a bat, and a hatchet. Earlier, Erica seemed to buy several random but scary looking melee weapons as well from the supply store. It makes me wonder if this is some important part of killing them. One of the group named Maxine seems to be in charge in place of Cecilia. Weirdly, she grabs the black bandana from Aaron and says she's keeping it, almost like a trophy, but who knows. It kind of seems like these different factions in the House of Slaughter have a rivalry. You know, there's actually several offshoots of Something is Killing the Children that explain a lot of this stuff. There's one called Book of Slaughter and another called House of Slaughter, so if you guys want more lore, let me know and I'll consider covering those as well. Anyway, that was a little bit of a detour, so where was I? Oh yeah, so Maxine says they need to deal with the locals next and they make way for the gymnasium. Maxine adds that full containment means they can be as bloody as they want to be. Well, that doesn't sound good. As Tom chokes on his own blood, Erica shields James' eyes and screams at Cecilia, asking what the hell is wrong with her. She tells Erica that there are consequences to her actions, and really these deaths are her fault for not following protocol. Erica angrily says that she hopes one day it sinks in that the real reason they're here has nothing to do with a few dozen dead children. They came here to kill people, not monsters. Cecilia retorts that she's here to uphold the secrecy that allows their order to operate, which does save children. But Erica asks her when the last time she even saw a monster was. Cecilia doesn't humor her question and says that she's about to take Erica with her under armed guard. As they argue, Tom pulls out his gun and fires at Cecilia, but one of the other white masks jumps in front of her, sacrificing himself. The other henchman tries to stop him, but Tom manages to shoot him too. Finally, Cecilia slashes his arm, forcing him to drop the gun. Clutching his bleeding neck, Tom manages to tell Cecilia, "Fuck you," and she finishes the job, cutting through his head with her knife. Kinda sad to see Tom, or John, whatever his name is, die like this, but he went out like a badass, and this little diversion actually gave Erica, James, and Bien a chance to escape. Hiding out in the woods, Erica asks James if he can find his house from here. He doesn't look too good and his shirt is bloody. It looks like maybe in the escape he tore open his stitches. He asks Erica what they're going to do at the house, and she dramatically says they're gonna play a little game. Outside the school gym, Maxine demands that Sheriff Joe and the others open up. In the meantime, she instructs her men to find another way in. The sheriff, Tim, and Tommy discuss whether they should open the door. Joe makes the case that they're Erica's people, but Tommy points out that Erica doesn't seem to like her people all that much. They can't call her either since they shut down the phone service. As they discuss this, the gym lights go out and there's a loud smash on the outside of the doors. This repeats until the doors smash open. Maxine just drove her freaking car through them. She tells everyone to gather in the center of the gym if they want to get through this alive. Tommy knows that this isn't good, but there's no way to escape. They're surrounded. As they enter James's house, Erica apologizes for forcing him to come back here. She tells him and Bien that for this to work, they need to listen to her every word. She pulls out the octopus and tells it she doesn't want any crap. It knows how bad things have gotten and they need to get this done. Surprisingly, it doesn't argue with her and she sets the doll down. Like before, the spirit of the creature inside manifests into a huge glowing form and Erica says it's time to begin. Issue 14. Bien is freaked out at the sight of Erica's monster and says she doesn't like it. Erica says she doesn't like it either and explains that the House of Slaughter taught her to tame it and afterwards it changed shape. She says that some of the other kids in the order made their monsters look pretty, but Erica didn't want to forget what it was and what it did to her, so she kept it ugly. Bien asks if the monster is still dangerous and it replies yes with a devilish grin. Erica clarifies that it's only dangerous to her. She instructs the two kids to lay down and close their eyes. She tells them to imagine they're lying in a big white empty space, not too cold, not too warm, but completely comfortable, breathing darkness in and the whiteness out. She tells Bien to keep breathing and asks James to think back to when he first told his friends the story and to remember that moment exactly. Erica's monster and her start to see an echo of the story playing like a movie in the room, with James getting up from the computer and looking out the back window. She tells him to take the image from a story and hold it in his mind. As he does, Erica can see an echo of the creature staring in through the window. Bien starts crying, worried that the monster will come again, and Erica assures her she'll keep her safe. She then asks Bien to picture the monster from the story she heard in her head, and asks her what it looked like. Bien opens her eyes and says, "It looked like that." The octopus spirit then projects an image of the creature as if it's taking on its shape. I hope this sequence wasn't too confusing, but some weird shit's going down and it's hard to explain because of all the visuals. At the school gym, Maxine and her posse start having everyone empty their pockets, collecting any cameras or phones they might have. Sheriff Joe tells her he's done everything her friends in masks asked them to do, and he doesn't want them treating these people like this. Maxine snaps at him, making it clear that Erica and Aaron aren't her friends, and that she's here to clean up their mess. He tries to argue with her, but she just says she's gonna bury her axe in his neck if he doesn't do what she tells him. While this is all going down, Tommy's mother finds the body bag of her dead daughter, Sophie. She unzips the bag and gets a look at the poor girl's corpse, and immediately breaks down into tears. She holds her daughter's cold cheek and says she would switch places with her in a heartbeat. Maxine comes walking over like an asshole and tells them to group up with the others. Tommy explains that they're saying goodbye to his dead sister. She asks for Tommy's phone and then tells them that they have 2 minutes to join the others. Meanwhile, at James' house, he's freaking out at the glowing monster in his living room, but Erica says it's still Octo. He's just shaped into a copy of the mother monster. It doesn't really matter though. James is straight up reliving his trauma and crying his eyes out. Erica says she's going to stop this from happening to anyone else. She picks up the octopus doll and chucks it outside, where it mimics the monster and cries out into the night. So this is how the trap works, using the copy to lure the other monsters in who will think it's their mother. Back in the gym, Tommy tells his mom that they need to get moving along, but she says she's staying right here and they can kill her if they have to. She just doesn't care anymore. Tommy kneels down and hugs his mom, saying he's still her son and he does care. He completely breaks down in tears, apologizing for not being able to protect his sister, and he wishes he was better. But he does have an idea that might get her out of here and Sophie into a proper grave. He walks up to the sheriff and tells him what these people are really here for: cleanup, to make sure nobody spreads the story of the monster. Joe asks him what he suggests they do, and Tommy replies that they should give them a better story. At the same time, Erica waits in the backyard for the monsters, and Octo tells her coldly that she's going to die. With crazy angry eyes, Erica tells him to get back into his octopus. She needs to work off some anger. The monsters move in and we get a stellar action sequence. Erica moves in, stabbing one creature and breaking another's leg with her fist. Then she leaps into the air and buries her knife into one of their heads, finishing it off before moving to the next. Obviously, description can't do this fight justice. Erica's a total badass and straight up wallops these motherfuckers. It's awesome seeing her standing in the grass covered in blood. Back in the gym, Tommy is demanding that Sheriff Joe arrest him, confessing to all of the murders and killing the little girl in the parking lot in front of everyone. The sheriff is confused until Tommy makes it a little clearer. If all these people saw him do it, then there's nothing that needs to be covered up, right? He tells the crowd how they saw him kill the little girl and how the sheriff arrested him in front of everyone, and that was the end of all the killing. Maxine catches on and tells him that this isn't gonna work. The monsters are still out there and they'll kill again. Gripping her axe, she says there's a cleaner way to end all of this. Okay, so let's move into the final issue of the Archer's Peak arc of Something is Killing the Children. Erica sits bloody and bruised in James' backyard, having finally killed the rest of the monsters. She stands up and struggles to walk toward the house, passing the chopped up carcasses of the monsters she killed. She slowly walks into the kitchen and douses herself with water before slumping to the floor. She asks James to bring her her backpack and pulls out her phone, calling the House of Slaughter and letting them know that the brood is dead, and to tell Cecilia it's time to go home. On the brink of total exhaustion, she asks James if she can use his shower. She stinks. It cuts to Cecilia getting the call, and she enters the school telling Maxine to stand down. With the monsters dead, she goes along with Tommy and insists that the sheriff arrest him for committing these terrible crimes. She tells him that everyone in this room must understand what transpired here, but this will be the end of it. Kinda sad that Tommy is sacrificing himself like this. He was a naive idiot a lot of the comic, but I think it's safe to say that he's made up for it. Cecilia then speaks to Principal Collins and tells him that the school will receive an anonymous donation that will more than cover the cost of damages on the property. In exchange, he'll handle the whole situation discreetly. She starts to leave and says they need to collect Aaron's body and destroy all the phones they collected. The rest will be hearsay, and they can manage that. Maxine isn't happy with all of this and starts arguing with her that these people have seen too much, but Cecilia harshly corrects her and says if she questions her again, it'll be a decade before she's back on the field. 2 weeks later, a news report covers the events, saying that Tommy Mahoney confessed to the murder of 25 children, finally killing his last victim in full view of the crowd. As the report plays, we see a montage of the school being rebuilt and Tommy's mother crying at the sight of Sophie's grave. Erica heads to the bus stop where all the missing children's posters are being torn down. When she gets there, she finds that the old dragon is waiting for her on the bench. She sits down and they have a little chat. The dragon says he remembers when she was just a girl and she got so angry at the House of Slaughter that she walked halfway across Chicago to get on a bus to Disney World, but how Jessica found her and brought her back. There's that name again. It seems like Jessica was an important person to Erica. The old dragon asks if Erica remembers what Jessica told her, and she repeats it, that the order is old and stuck in its ways, but without it, children would die. There's a pause and the old man says he misses Jessica terribly. Erica looks pissed and reminds him that he sent her to her death. She says that he's not going to convince her to care less. But the old man says to the contrary, he wishes that half of the people at the House of Slaughter cared as much as her. As he eats some gummy worms, he says that all he wants is for her to show a little discipline. She could have ended this from the beginning. Erica lays out exactly what that would look like, by her killing Tommy in the cave, letting James bleed out from his gunshot, and using Bien as bait. Then she could have killed the little girl and burned all the children's corpses to hide the evidence before hopping on the next bus out of town. The problem is, then nobody would have had any closure. The old man says she wouldn't have had to kill Bien. She could have recruited her and expanded her branch of the family. Furthermore, he asks what Erica was trying to prove with all this. She honestly answers that she just wanted an outcome where everyone would live. But the dragon reminds her that more children died as a result of her actions. Erica, of course, argues that more people died because the order got in her way. The old man then changes the subject, asking Erica to come home. Now that Aaron is dead, she's the last Black Mask in the House of Slaughter. Erica rejects this, and in fact, she renounces the House of Slaughter and the Order of St. George. She's going to keep hunting monsters until it kills her, but not for them. The man says that he can't accept this and reminds her that the House of Slaughter is only one of many houses. She just tells him to try and stop her and then gets on the bus. As she sits down, she hears a voice. It's James asking where they're going. She immediately tells him no, but he laughs and says he's actually getting off in Milwaukee to stay with his mom for a while. This relaxes her a bit. He tells Erica that they still can't find Bien's family, so the woman from the police station is going to take her in. James then starts to cry and tells her thank you, that he doesn't know what he would have done if all of this happened and there was nothing he could do. She gave him something he could do to help, and that meant the world. On the final page, James asks how far she's going this time, and she says she has no idea. The bus hits the highway, and we can see a sign saying, "Leaving Archer's Peak." A fitting end as this closes the Archer's Peak arc of Something is Killing the Children. This is a nice place to stop for now, but let me know if you want me to cover the next story arc, cause I'd love to keep going on this series. As I've said, I love the art style in this comic as well as the world building. I could look at these drawings all day. One big theme that I thought this arc really touched on is the balance between principle and utility. Erica cares a lot about the people whose lives are destroyed by the monsters. In principle, she can't bring herself to kill innocent people even if it might bring about a greater good. We can see the fruits of her actions by how she brought closure to James, who would have gone on on to live a confused and shattered life. However, the House of Slaughter takes a more utilitarian or consequentialist approach. Their goal is to stop as many killings as possible at large, even if that means they need to do some terrible things to achieve it. It's the classic the ends justify the means, or you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet argument. And the thing is, they may be right. Their way of doing things might lead to overall less death, even if they would have to kill some innocent people to achieve it. It seems like there is probably a middle ground here, but it's hard not to sympathize with Erica's viewpoint. Is it okay to cause harm to people even if it meant saving lives? Maybe I'm taking this into an unnecessary philosophical view, but that's just what came to mind reading this one. Anyway, what did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Huge thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Don't forget you can play War Thunder for free right now on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or mobile. And if you're a new player or haven't logged in for 6 months on PC or consoles, you'll get that massive bonus pack with premium vehicles, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of premium. Use my link in the description or the pinned comment to claim it. Shout out to Kill Me Katie as always for the intro and outro music, which is likely playing right now. And if you want to see your art at the end of my videos, email me a submission to the address below with a name or social media handle. But I appreciate you guys watching at all. This is Grief speaking. Goodbye, friends.
Wake up tomorrow just to feel guilty. After what happened, you're still barely talking. I close my eyes just to see what I'm missing. After tomorrow, you won't even.
This is Devi, and she's losing her mind. She doesn't want to leave the house since her social life is cursed with constant tragedy surrounding anyone she meets. On top of that, she's been buried in work from her new job at a soulless corporation, leaving her no time for her own personal creative outlets. Speaking of which, her unfinished painting has started to speak to her. Its name is Sickness, and its voice sounds a lot like Devi. Hello friends, this is Grief speaking, and today we're digging into I Feel Sick. This comic is actually in the same universe as Johnny the Homicidal Maniac and Squee, two other Jhonen Vasquez comics I've covered. Don't worry though, you can watch this video independently if you missed those. There's some very minor crossover with the Johnny comics, but I'll explain it when it comes up. I Feel Sick is distinct in a couple of different ways, mainly that it's fully colored. As much as I love the author's typical black and white gritty style, it's a nice change up seeing this world in color and adds a lot in my opinion. Anyway, this is a really interesting and entertaining comic, so let's just get into it. This is I Feel Sick Explained. Part 1 kicks off with journal entries from our central character, Devi. We learn that she's gotten a job painting cover art for Nerve Publishing, a fairly large company. This has allowed Devi to quit her soul-sucking day job at the bookstore to make a living doing what she loves. The problem is she is swamped with work and feels like her creativity is being sucked out by the constant revisions requested by Nerve and their corporate structure, leaving her no time or will to focus on her own creative pursuits. Late in the night, we see Devi cursing and seems to be repeatedly stabbing someone as blood sprays across the room. However, the truth soon comes into focus. It's actually just red paint that Devi was furiously splattering across a painting of a doll that kind of resembles her. She also appears to be having a conversation with the painting, ironically arguing that she's not talking to herself. She gets a call on the phone and answers, "Wet Jimmy's Gourmet Ass Meats, does this be pickup or delivery?" Turns out it's only her friend Tina who lives upstairs. After hearing Devi talking to herself through the floor, she figures something's wrong and decides to head down and check on her. Tina playfully enters the apartment yelling, "I hunger for ass meats, bitch." Devi says she's surprised the psychic lady who lives downstairs hasn't started yelling at them yet, and sure enough, the creepy woman yells, "Shut up, why don't you die in that plane crash already?" Tina asks what's up with Devi, and she's reluctant to tell her. She then has a sudden memory from the past. She's 16 and a boy named Eddie is picking her up on a date. Her dad is reluctant to let her go, thinking he's losing his baby, and threatens to stab himself with a fork. That made me laugh. So the two go on a pretty typical date, dinner and a movie, and on the drive home, Devi notices that Eddie seems to be getting progressively dumber, as if something horrible is happening to his mind. Then she realizes he's horny. It's funny how this realization is so dramatic, like she found out he's a murderer or something. Devi asks him to take her back home, but the guy starts trying to lay moves on her and starts to take it way too far, becoming like a horny zombie and trying to reach over to kiss her. Of course, he's not keeping his hands on the wheel and hits a mongoose, causing the car to go off-road and crash into a tree. Devi is in a complete panic, but other than that, she seems okay. On the other hand, Eddie is not okay. She looks over to find large shards of glass sticking out of his head and one of his eyeballs dangling from its socket. Somehow he seems to still be alive, but when he finally speaks, all he can say is, "Can I touch your butt?" and tries to convince her that it would be her final gift to him. Yeah, the guy's still trying to get some even with an eyeball hanging out of his head. Debbie is pissed and goes on a sarcastic rant that ends in the suggestion that she should have brought a on to screw his empty eye socket. Yeah, I kind of forgot how dark the humor gets with these Vasquez comics. Well, Demi's stuck in her seatbelt, so she's left waiting for help, which never seems to show up. The morning comes and Eddie is still alive and trying to get laid. It's actually pretty funny. He's like, "I'm losing a lot of blood here, so are we gonna do this or what?" Debbie looks in the road and sees that the mongoose is still alive and currently eating Eddie's brain. She asks the question we're all thinking, which is, if Eddie is brainless, then what's he thinking with? But his shit-eating grin answers the question. His penis, of course. Debbie snaps out of the memory and back to the present and tries to explain that something is wrong with her head, like some vital piece of her mind is slipping. She just can't quite explain it. Surprisingly, Tina says she knows exactly what Debbie needs: Chinese food. After some arguing, Debbie says that she'll go out with Tina on the condition that she gets to kill her after. Sounds like a good deal to her, so they head out. In the city, Debbie is clearly disgusted by the outside world. Luckily, they're going to a restaurant that has no actual staff and is fully automated by machines. Perfect for Debbie's resistance to social interaction. So they head into Eat or Die, that's the name of the restaurant, and talk a little more. Tina asks how it's been to not be working retail anymore, and we're hit with a quick flashback of a customer asking Debbie to help him find a book, with the only clue being that he thinks it was blue. So needless to say, she's happy to not be working there anymore. After the small talk, Tina asks her more about what's really going on. Debbie just outright admits she's losing her mind. She's been buried in work since she started at Nerve, and even though it's a good gig and better than the bookstore, she doesn't have time to work on her own creative endeavors. Just before she got her job at Nerve, she started a painting just for herself, a little doll with an empty, soulless look that she named Sickness. After she got swamped working for Nerve, she never finished the painting, and soon after that, it began to talk to her. More specifically, it's like she's talking to herself because the doll has her voice, only it's a whispery, tired version of herself that she can't get to shut up. Sickness repeats the same phrase over and over. "The screws are coming undone, mother. You can't stop it." However, Debbie thinks she can if she keeps working. Tina suggests that maybe this is all stemming from too much work. That or Debbie's on crack. They leave the restaurant and Tina says that Debbie just needs to get out more. Advice that Debbie has grown to despise since Tina says that about almost everything. She then gives a series of exaggerated examples like her ass turning into a giant crab, an alien bursting from her chest, and tartar buildup exploding out of her brain. In each scenario, Tina has the same answer: you need to get out more. Of course, her friend says this is BS, and also, why is she wearing a bear suit in this example? Anyway, Debbie goes on to say that people seem to be a detriment to her life, and she's trying to stay sane by avoiding them. And she recounts the bad date she went on where a guy shit himself. By the way, this is an actual encounter we see in its disgusting entirety in Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, where a guy gets horrible diarrhea while at dinner with Debbie. This alone is motivation for her to stay inside forever. We then get even more proof in another flashback. Debbie sits alone in a gothic nightclub of sorts. If you look in the background here, you can see Noodle Boy in the crowd. Anyway, she's approached by a vampire who appears in a poof of smoke, or at least a guy who pretends to be a vampire. Debbie quickly calls him out, noticing the smoke bombs he clearly dropped on the ground for his entrance. The guy's name is Eric, and he's quite dramatic, something Debbie pokes fun at. Next, a girl joins them who claims to be a mummy. Yeah, she thinks that vampires are too trendy. Debbie keeps joking around, and Eric tells her she needs to take things more seriously and goes on a dark monologue about the night. One of the things I like about these comics is that they celebrate the gothic scene but also make fun of it. There's always a touch of self-awareness to the humor. Well, Eric's little performance just causes Debbie to laugh and he gets pissed off. He tries to leave dramatically with more smoke bombs and ends up accidentally lighting himself on fire. As he screams in agony, we cut back to the present and Debbie continues talking about how her social life seems to always consist of tragic events like this. This kind of chaos has been happening way more lately and she thinks it's connected to the doll painting. Tina says she's just overreacting, and so Debbie tries to prove the insanity of her life with another story. She's on another date with a dude who actually seems like a normal guy. It's going so well that Debbie can't help but examine him closely to find out what's wrong. She then out of nowhere accuses him of being the Walking Dead, but plays it off as a joke when she realizes that maybe she's the crazy one at this point. However, her intuitions may prove to be true when the man accidentally orders fresh brains from the waiter. He tries to correct himself, but in the end, he can't help but take a bite out of the waiter's head. Her date ends up actually being a zombie. In the present, Tina thinks this is too far and she must be making it up, but Devi seems dead serious about it. She believes that the painting is trying to distract her for some reason and that it all started when she began working for Nerve. The constant demand for revisions on her covers have kept her from being able to work on her own art, and on top of that, all these strange things keep happening around her. When she finally has a moment to try and do something creative, there's just nothing left in her head. She should have a stockpile of things to call upon, but it's like the painting is stealing her creativity somehow. In the end, she's convinced that Tina is also part of the distraction and finally kicks her out. Alone again, Devi starts yelling at Sickness, asking what she wants from her, more of her creativity or maybe her frustration. Why won't she just let her work? Maybe if she could get some work done, she could finish painting her after all. Sickness replies saying she's nothing more than a focal point at the moment and that she'll finish herself soon enough. She goes on to say that soon she'll have her own true voice instead of using Devi. She's also curious how Devi detected her as a separate entity so soon, since usually they, whatever they are never acknowledged until it's too late. It's a little cryptic, but Devi believes she can stop the sickness if she just keeps working. The doll tells her it's unlikely and that when it's all over, she can still lead a fine life as a raving vagrant or possibly a crack whore. Devi's pretty pissed and tells the entity she doesn't know who she's messing with. Sickness may have done this to people before, but she won't get to her. She'll beat it. She rages out and breaks the glass jar she was holding, cutting up her hands that are now dripping with blood. She drops a massive F-bomb, and that wraps up part 1. Part 2 starts off with another set of journal entries. We learn that Devi had a weird dream where her brain fell out and started to grow a new body because she didn't use hers anymore. She says she hasn't touched a painting in over a week since her hands are cut up so bad. Plus, the doll keeps taunting her by singing all the songs she hates. She says she has a meeting with Mr. Nevers next week, her boss at Nerve Publishing, and doesn't have much to show him. As the entries trail on, it's clear that Devi is losing it, eventually just repeating the phrase, "I want to be sickness," before finally ending the entries with, "I feel sick." Next, we see Devi sitting on the couch with her hands bandaged, saying she needs to get back to work even if that means she has to hold the paintbrush with her ass. Sickness tells her that even if this new ass technique worked, she would only be able to spend time on her work for Nerve. There's no time for personal outlets, and Devi should just relax. In the meantime, Sickness seems to be completing herself. Her eyes are no longer blank holes, but 2 screws. Devi starts to believe that Sickness doesn't just want to stop her from working, but specifically to stop her from working out of her own creativity. Sickness actually affirms this, but then immediately denies it. It's like Sickness is arguing with herself until she finally cries out, "Why did you have to wake up so soon? I need more time." Devi then pieces together that whatever it is Sickness is doing, she's caught onto it quicker than the doll expected. Sickness affirms this too and says that Devi woke up before it could clear enough space in her head, but then immediately tells herself to shut up. She says that she's only been slowed down, but she will push further. At this, Devi dramatically tells the Sickness no, and the painting seems to crack a little. She tells the Sickness she can decide what to do with her own fucking brain. The creature says Devi would be offended at the amount of people who leave enough space in their head wishing for someone else to decide for them. She also says that she can't leave yet because she's not finished, and for Devi not to do anything to make her come out prematurely. The doll says that Devi's friend thought he could fight too. This is actually a reference to Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, but we'll get to that later. Devi just ignores it and decides it's her brain so she can make the Sickness talk. She asks why the Sickness is doing this, and since the doll is having trouble shutting herself up, she blatantly explains that she wants Devi's mind for its power of invention and creativity, since Devi's not really using it. Sickness also reminds her that she's late for an important meeting. Devi freaks out realizing what time it is and speeds over to Nerve Publishing to meet with her boss, Mr. Nevers. She enters his office and we finally get a look at the guy who has a large cut and stitches across his forehead. Anyway, he wants to see the covers that Devi's been working on, and she immediately starts laying down excuses, explaining all the crazy stuff that's happened to her, including her injured hands and the evil doll painting. Nevers says he's glad she didn't finish the work actually, because they have some changes they'd like to make. This is kind of odd considering he hasn't even seen them yet, but he explains that they have refined their revision process and now they make alterations before the artist is done with the previous revisions. It's much more efficient. He says the main change they want to make is to add a monkey to the cover, even though the book has no monkeys in it. Research shows that people love monkeys, so it'll double the sales by adding it. He He shows Devi a mock-up of one of her old covers with the monkey added, and she straight up says she's gonna shoot him. He tells her that there are sacrifices to be made if you want to make it in this business. In fact, Mr. Nevers himself had the creative centers of his brain removed just so he could be in this position. Man, the satire here is absolutely cutting. Well, as Mr. Nevers drones on, Devi is suddenly reminded of what the sickness said, about how her friend thought he could fight too. This causes another flashback featuring who other than Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. In that comic, we are actually introduced to Devi when he and Johnny are out on a date. It ends horribly, however, when Johnny tries to kill her, egged on by demonic entities similar to the sickness. So this memory appears to be sometime earlier in that date. The two are sitting on a car overlooking the city. Johnny mentions how he hasn't drawn in a long time. He wonders, if you stop doing something that defined you as a person, do you cease to be that person? He asks her what she would do if she couldn't paint anymore, and she says that it's not even a possibility, it's really all she's got. If she stopped painting, she'd probably cease to exist. The conversation ends with Devi saying that the city looks pretty when you're looking down on it, which just so happens to be where the date starts in Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. She snaps back to the present and just tells Mr. Never to shut up. She goes on a real tear telling the old man off, asking him if he gets off on driving people crazy because of some bitterness. He just completely ignores her and tells her to make it a space piggy instead of a monkey. Finally, she just straight up quits. He tells her she's not a team player and that there are plenty of people who are happy to have their wills broken. She throws him a series of insults as she walks out the door, and he just laughs maniacally. His 4 o'clock meeting is next, and when the guy enters the room, Mr. Nevers just yells at him, "I'm going to rip you in the butt and throw you out the window." I mean, what the hell? And I guess he does it too, because as Devi leaves the building, you can see the man flying out of the window. Meanwhile, the doll begins to physically climb out of the painting with strange scythe-like legs. Devi arrives back to her apartment building and Tenna spots her out of her window. She immediately tries to get Devi to go out with her and says she's coming down right now. Devi realizes this is all part of the sickness's distractions and rushes inside to get to her apartment and work on something creative now that she quit Nerve. Inside, it seems like everything is getting in her way as she runs through the building. A dopey kid sitting in the hallway, some guys moving a TV set, and a dead dog. Yeah, there's just a dead dog on the floor for some reason. But she doesn't let anything distract her and keeps moving, trying to beat Tenna to her apartment. Next, she's blocked by the kid from downstairs who now somehow has the dead dog on his head. Yeah, this is too bizarre. It's definitely caused by the sickness. She jumps over the kid and is then attacked by a random cat, which she throws to the ground and uses her suitcase to smash. Her face is all scratched to hell, but she keeps moving. However, behind her, Tenna shows up and demands they go out to get noodles. As she runs from her pestering friend, a random toddler appears and calls her mommy, trying to slow her down. Devi grabs the kid and chucks her at Tenna to trip her up. This doll is really throwing everything it can her way. Next, a creepy guy blocks the hall trying to flirt with Devi, and she just drop kicks him in the face. She's so close, but hits the most challenging deterrent yet, the psychic lady who lives below her. The woman is huge and completely blocks up the hallway. She mentions again that Devi needs to die in that plane crash. Apparently she hasn't left her apartment in years, but sensed some kind of impending doom and crawled out. In her head, Devi hears the sickness telling her she tried, but it's a dead end and it's time for her to rest. Devi is determined, however. She simply gives the sickness a fuck you and then tells everyone to stand back. She's going in. She runs and jumps into the fat folds of the psychic woman, attempting to crawl between her and the wall to get through. She starts to get overwhelmed by the blubber, however, and then she hears a voice speaking to her telepathically. Apparently, it's not the woman who's psychic, but her fat. The psychic fat says it simply shares its knowledge with the woman. It senses that Devi is in trouble and wants to help her, but first it must show her something. Devi then has a psychic-induced flashback, this time from when she was just a little girl. A little boy approaches her and she spits a cloud of chalk into his face that she was chewing on. Clearly, Devi was a weird-ass kid. He gives her a Valentine's card and she crumbles it up and then smashes it into the kid's face before running away. I feel pretty bad for the kid, and worse than that, the psychic fat informs her that this was the last time she met someone who truly understood her. However, the kid died of a chalk-induced asthma attack shortly after. It also tells her that the sickness feeds on her creative work. When that's gone, what'll be left? Nothing. Devi then crawls out of the fat and makes it into her apartment, where she's confronted by the sickness, now a half-formed entity. The sickness tells Devi that it's her brain now, since she wasn't using it after all, and she'll need to cooperate so that she can become real. And she says if Devi doesn't play along, she'll kill her. However, Devi doesn't look scared at all. In fact, she picks the sickness up by the hair and says, "Bullshit, you need me too much." The sickness then rages out about how she isn't finished and that her messed up legs are the best she could do before Devi decided to quit her job. She begs Devi to just let it happen a little longer, she just needs more time, and Devi mocks the creature, saying, "Please take as much as my brain as you want, I'll just stand here drooling and shitting myself." Clearly the threats aren't working, so Sickness tries a nicer approach, trying to tempt Devi into letting her have control, saying she won't have to worry about anything anymore and just waltz through life doing whatever she wants. Devi smiles and picks the doll up once more, then chucks it as hard as possible into a blank canvas. She then stabs the creature with the back end of a paintbrush and pulls the screws out of its head in graphic detail. Devi says, "It's a miserable planet you've landed on, Sickness, but it's mine and I don't want company. You don't tell me what I do with my work, and now you must see what I tell you to see, whether you want to or not. You're my sad, tortured little audience." She drops the screws into her backpack, and in the next sequence, Devi and Tenna are sitting on the roof of her car overlooking the city. She tells Tenna that apparently the psychic Fat didn't have the heart to tell the woman who really dies in the plane crash. Then suddenly, a plane crashes into the heart of the city. Devi says, "God, that's pretty. You can really smell the fat lady." And that's the end of I Feel Sick. So let's do a quick recap. It seems that when Devi interacted with Johnny and witnessed his mind-sucking entities, the Doughboys, this introduced other cosmic creatures to her creative mind. We know that the Doughboys, at least in Johnny's case, were created by a cosmic entity made from human negativity, but you can go watch the Johnny video if you want to get into that can of worms. It's possible that Sickness is another being made by that creature, or may come from somewhere else entirely, because in the Johnny comics, the devil himself implied that there are bigger forces at work than even him or God. Either way, in Devi's case, it seems the Sickness has one goal: to utilize the creative part of her brain that she's not using and slowly take her over, creating a new body in the process and eventually replacing her completely, something the Sickness implies has happened many times with other people. Now that's what is literally happening, but let's be honest, this is a not so subtle metaphor for neglecting your creativity. I imagine this comes from the author's real life experience balancing his personal creative pursuits and also trying to make a living. In fact, he was working on I Feel Sick at the same time he started early development on Invader Zim for Nickelodeon. I wonder if the stress and sometimes silliness of the corporate structure was partly what inspired Nerve Publishing. Ultimately, it seems like I Feel Sick is a cautionary tale about sacrificing your creative output and becoming a slave to the corporate machine. If you're not using your brain, someone else will. So what did you guys think of I Feel Sick? And how do you rank it along with Jhonen Vasquez's other comics? It's been really fun for me covering these comics because I really didn't even know they existed until now, and I really like their distinct style. It's almost never a good idea to revamp things like this, but I would love to see an animated show or video game, something like that takes place in this universe. Shout out to Kill Me Katie as always for the intro and outro music, which is likely playing right now, and thanks to everyone who checked out the Limerence Kickstarter and trailer. If you missed it in the last video, it's a really cool semi-animated album film that these really talented artists are making, and I really hope they get the funding to complete it. So go check out the trailer, I'll link it below. If you want to see your art at the end of my videos, email me with a social media handle or name at the address below. And finally, big thank you to my patrons for supporting the channel. If you want your name displayed at the end of every video like these fine people, consider joining my Patreon. But I appreciate you guys watching at all. This is Grief speaking. Goodbye, friends.